Hello and welcome back to the Red Special Guitar Podcast. I'd like to wish you all a belated Happy New Year and I hope you all had a good Christmas and New Year period. A little bit sorry that it's taken so long to get back to posting up, but there's been loads going on which I won't bore you with. But we're back and today we have another fantastic episode with possibly the person who is behind everyone, or not everyone, but lots of people looking into using CNC machines for their Red Special builds. I got to catch up with him in the summer in 2021 and it's taken me that long to put it together. But it's well worth watching this episode on YouTube because throughout the conversation he's put together a montage of all the different bits and clips that he's put together that are on his own YouTube channel to go behind the conversation. I'm sure you've guessed who it is. It's the man who took 3 years to build his Red Special using a CNC machine. The founder of DSGB.net is Dr. Doug Short. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take the opportunity today to welcome somebody who has helped me massively in the Red Special community, especially whilst he was undertaking his own mammoth work on his own guitar. I met him once on Rock Beach and then we've stayed friends ever since, and he has a lot to answer for. Doug Short, how are you, sir?
I'm fantastic, John. It's fantastic to be here at Stable Cottage in Devon, at your house.
Red Special Guitar Podcast Towers, I'll have you know, Doug.
It's the centre of the Red Special universe as far as I'm concerned, John.
It's really not, no. Doug, it's lovely. It's funny, we were chatting and you've been here a little bit, but what's funny is it's just popped up on my phone that 2 years ago today, or would have been a year ago today, the guitar that you and I discussed on Rock Beach 2 years ago, pretty much today, was completed, and that was the guitar that you and I put together with your CNC skills.
My CNC skills, yes, my meager skills. Well, I don't know what to say, but it's quite remarkable how time goes by so quickly, and obviously we've all struggled our way through the unprecedented times of COVID-19.
Yeah, it's been tough. How have you been up in Scotland? Have you been family well? Everyone okay?
Well, yeah, I guess strangely enough, it's just been pretty much business as usual for me. So I don't know if your listeners are interested. If they're not, you can merrily cut this out. But I work at a nuclear power station, and for the last 2 years, I've been working on testing and commissioning our replacement control room simulator. And I've just started another 2-year secondment now as a simulator instructor. But the commissioning and testing process of the simulator was quite intensive, and that took us all the way through the COVID period. So we had to make a kind of strategic decision around about March last year, whether to cut and run with the project or just keep going and testing it. Unfortunately for us, we had a crew of retired operations engineers who were part of the test and commissioning team. And as soon as all the COVID lockdowns came in, they had to go into isolation. So my test and commissioning team shrank quite substantially. So I had, in addition to trying to manage the process, I had to take up quite a bit of the testing effort myself. But unfortunately, one of the chaps actually had a heart attack and died not many weeks after he went into self-isolation. So it's not been without its challenges, but apart from that, really, it's just been business as usual. So my wife, Jane, works at Edinburgh University, and she's been working successfully from home. So in the overall sense, the situation with the COVID lockdowns has been relatively kind to us. Yep. Nobody we know personally has got ill from it or worse or died or anything. So it's almost like it's been happening, in the country and around the world to other people, and we've just been forging on. Yeah. So that in itself has been a bit strange.
Yeah, definitely. We're kind of living in your own bubble. I mean, we've all been living in our own bubbles, figuratively, and probably actually living in bubbles too. But yeah, living in a bubble, actually having to go to work and do something quite important as well.
Yes, I agree.
Because we all need power.
We all need power.
Can't plug AC30s in on batteries yet, Nigel.
No. Or electric cars.
No, true, and that's another conversation for another day. So yeah, you've been well then, and you're
very much so. Yeah.
Wonderful. And for those that don't know who Doug is, Doug has. I'm going to plug your website now, Doug.
Fantastic.
Doug has a website, DSGB, Doug Short Guitar Blog, and on that, Doug has catalogued all of his adventures in the Red Special world and with guitars, I should say, and all of the different places it's taken him and different interactions. And I'm sure we'll come on to some of those stories and some of those things. But I believe it's dsgb.net.
That's correct, yeah, dsgb.net. So it's a deliberately short URL because I don't think Doug Short Guitar Blog is very snappy. And it's not just about guitars, there's some gear stuff on there. Yeah. So just dsgb.net.
But it's well worth heading over to have a look at. Doug's been putting some more content out recently on YouTube as well, and having a few more. I mean, the site's been live probably, it must be close to 12 months.
Not quite that yet. I think I acquired the domain name in around about the middle of October 2020, right. And I started working on it while I was away on holiday. On the October half term, I think it was pretty much fully populated after about 5 or 6 months. So we're the renewal is October, so 9 months.
But it's a wealth of information, and if you're asking a specific question about Red Specials, or if you're interested to know about Doug's journey post listening to him talk about it, you can go and have a look at where Doug has very scientifically analysed every element. He's smiling and laughing. All the different elements of things that Doug went through in his own mind in order to create his own Red Special replica. Amongst other things which are on there, like helping myself with mine and helping Luke Holwerder with his, and lots of other interesting stories. But Doug, as I ask everyone, first off in the podcast, can you remember back to your first memory of Queen? Where were you? What song was that?
I don't think it was a specific song, but there was a very specific set of circumstances where I got into Queen, and it kind of happened quite suddenly. So as I recall, I probably would have been about 13 or 14. So this would have been, I was born in 1974, so this would be around about 1987 or 1988. And I was actually just starting to get into music generally. And my feeling is that the 1980s pop music is some of the best. Probably, most people would argue in the UK and probably the USA, 1960s was the best era for music. I would politely disagree. I think it's the 1980s. So I was starting to get into 1980s music, and I remember joining one of these record clubs, I suppose, where you get sent some random records on a weekly or monthly basis. I forget. Anyway, I was at my mum's cousin's house, and it was actually the guy I'm going to credit, Ian Jackson, was my second cousin. He was into kind of stuff like AC/DC and Queen, obviously, Iron Maiden, that kind of stuff. So he was asking me, so okay, what kind of? And he's about 12 years older than me, so he'd be in his probably mid to late 20s. So he was asking me, okay, so what kind of music are you into? I said, well, sort of 80s pop music, but I've joined this record club, and the most recent. So what was the most recent thing that they've sent you in the club? Remember it distinctly. It was actually Curiosity Killed the Cat's album.
Nice. And
he was horrified by my lack of musical taste. No disrespect to Curiosity Killed the Cat. So he said, right, we need to deal with this. I'm going to lend you some proper music. So the two pieces of proper music that he lent me were A Night at the Opera album and A Day at the Races album. So took them home, and the first thing that just blew me away was the cover designs of the albums. Obviously, one white, one black, the wonderful artistic crests on the front, and you open it up, and there's all the artistic photographs of the band members there, and I was just blown away before I'd even listened to the music. And I think he lent me them on vinyl LP. I don't have any vinyl LP anymore, but I must have had a record deck at the time. So. And I think I listened to A Night at the Opera first, and just from the first few bars of Death on Two Legs, it just grabbed me by, I don't know where it grabbed me, somewhere vital. Yeah. It grabbed me, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing I've ever heard. So Night at the Opera, Day at the Races, played them to death, gave them back a good few weeks later, copied them onto tape. And that got me started with Queen, where it became a sort of mild teenage obsession. Bought all the albums, the VHS, the Magic Years, Live in Rio, all that stuff.
At that point, were you a guitar player then, or was that something that came later? Were you interested in just the whole music, or did anything specific about the band, like the sound of the Red Special, hit you as being different, or was it more just the whole experience?
No, I think actually at that point, the biggest impact on me was simply Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
Got a bit obsessed by Freddie Mercury, as I'm sure a lot of people do. But no, I think Freddie was the biggest impact there. This kind of flamboyant lead singer, and the vocal range just incredible. So no, I first picked up a guitar. So my musical background is simply I did piano up to grade 2 when I was about 9 or 10. We had an old upright piano at home. And when we moved, that got trashed. So that was a convenient excuse for me to say, I don't want to continue with piano, please, Mum and Dad. And that was me. So I got a grade 2, not particularly accomplished. The next time I picked up a musical instrument, I must have been about 13 or 14. I just randomly decided I wanted to play the clarinet. But the first time I picked up a guitar, I think it was probably about 17. I remember it being at school in lower 6. So I'd been about 17, and there was a guy in my house, Richard Baker, his name was, and he was for a brief period of time a member of the Scottish Parliament. So he's a person you can go and look up on the internet. Richard Baker, ex-MSP. And he had just a budget acoustic guitar, and I just decided one day to just commandeer his guitar and pick it up. And I can still remember the first thing I learned to play, which was "Paint It Black" by the Rolling Stones. So that was my first time I picked up a guitar, and the first thing I played on a guitar.
So from then on, obviously, so Queen's obviously become like this massive part of your life, or musical taste early on.
Yes.
And then at 17, you've picked up a guitar and played some Rolling Stones. It's you, heretic you. And then at what point do you then start looking a bit more into Queen and putting guitar and Queen together? And
I don't know, but I think I can't remember when I first found out that Brian had made his own guitar, but as we all acknowledge, there's this mystique about the Red Special.
Yeah.
Because Brian's playing a distinctive guitar. At that point, I mean, that was before the time that even a lot of the old timers in the Red Special community say that there was no information. So it was prehistoric. There's nothing out there at all. So I could see that Brian was playing a distinctive guitar that I didn't recognize, and at some point, so obviously doing all the reading in the material that comes with the albums and the VHSs and magazines and stuff, and then I must have at some point read early on that Brian made his own guitar. And as you know, slightly obsessive teenage boys and girls do, they just come out with things like, I want to make my own guitar. I'll make my own guitar someday. And to be honest, John, that was the end of that idea until probably 4 or 5 years ago. So it's a little bit crazy in that respect.
Because obviously, like a lot of people, life happens and things happen and you go off, and obviously you've told everyone that you end up working in a nuclear power plant, so you've obviously gone to university and studied quite hard, and that's been a massive focus for you. And you've just said that 3 to 4 years ago, or 4 to 5 years ago, the Red Special sort of phase arrived.
Yes.
How did that happen then? Because obviously you've happened across some information, or something's reignited that passion, or you've put 2 and 2 together and gone, I can do this now. I've got the time, I've got the skills, I've got the knowledge, I've got the crazy element in my brain that tells me this is something that's sensible to do and I want to put my time to.
Yes, indeed. Well, you play a part in that, and as do the other guys on the Red Special forum. So I'll try not to make the story excessively long-winded, but so my son Ben must have been about, I could probably work it out, but anyway, I joined up on the Red Special web forum, trying to work it backwards frantically in my head. It was August 2012. So my son was born in November 2009. So he'd be sort of 3-ish, 3 and a bit. So the crazy idea was, I know, I'll buy him a Brian May Guitars Mini May to have a thrash about on, a 3-year-old boy. But I do have some pictures of him in his pajamas thrashing around on it, looking quite plausible actually. So I just whim. I'll buy my guitar. And then I must have Googled something like mini electric guitars, and guess what? Probably the BMG Mini May popped up in a Google search. I imagine that's how it went. So then it was just straight out with the credit cards onto guitar, and click. I'll have one Mini May, please. And I need an amp. Oh well, we'll buy a little Vox VT20 valve reactor thing. Ka-ching. And strap and all this other cables, and before I knew it, it's like 400 quid's worth of gear was arriving in a box. So that was that. So I bought Ben. It probably would have been the first iteration of the Mini May. I think they've redesigned it a couple of times since I bought it in August 2012. So I thought, okay, the premise was, well, okay, Ben can have a thrash around on it. I can, get me back into playing. I think I had an Ovation special balladeer 6-string acoustics. I think that was my only guitar at the time. I thought it's about time I had some sort of electric guitar, I think. So I thought, well, I can mess around with this Mini May, and maybe when Ben gets a bit older he can have a thrash around on it. It'd be good fun for both of us. So I bought the Mini May, and like I think a few people who had bought these guitars on a whim, found it was a little bit difficult to get set up, get intonated correctly, and get the right. I'm not sure what strings it came with, but I just couldn't get it set up properly. So I thought, no, okay, then time to give this to a professional. So I found my local, I think it was Guitar in Edinburgh. There was a chap who worked. I don't know if he still does actually, but at the time he worked out of their basement. Little Bob. He was a big guy. So I booked it in and gave it to him and said, look, just make this work, please. And so he kept it a week or two, and I got it back, and he said, right, I can't get it tuned to open E, I'll have to go open F. I've put some quite heavy gauge strings on it, and I've had to modify some of the bridge pieces and file them out just to get the bridge pieces pulled back enough so we could intonate it properly, and sure enough it worked. But I thought, well, I tell you what, this isn't great. This isn't a great situation. You should be able to just buy one of these things and take it out the box and just play it. It work out the box, So I think this is only the start of the journey. But I contacted Barry Moorhouse, Brian May, just dropped him an email saying, this is my experience. It wasn't a complaint as such. It was more an observation. I just said, look, I bought this BMG Mini May, and I just expected it to work out the box, mate, and it kind of doesn't. And then I had to spend, I think the little Bob charged me, it was well over 50 quid, 65 quid to set this thing up. Yeah, and it was a significant proportion of the guitar cost, which I don't know, £150, I can't remember. So I thought, no, I really should just feed this back. So I dropped Barry Moorhouse an email, and credit to the guy, we were on holiday in Cornwall. It must have been maybe 2013, and obviously I put my phone number at the end of the email, and he just randomly called me up. And so I explained the situation. Look, I agree with you, this isn't good enough. We'll look at the design of this and try and improve it. I'm sorry you've had to fork out a bit of extra money to get our guitars to work. And he said, a gesture of goodwill, I've got some signed pictures of Brian playing on Buckingham Palace roof, lying around the office. I'll send you one of those. So he did. He sent me this nice signed picture of Brian playing on Buckingham Palace roof, and a little piece of headed notepaper with just said thanks for the positive feedback, which is great. And I also thought, well, I'll tell you what, I'll join a forum and just say, look, hey, if you not knowing who these people would be on the forum, look, if you're going to buy a Mini May, just think twice, because I bought one and I couldn't get it set up, and I had to spend £65 getting it set up. And these people are, who is this idiot? We've got Guytons and KZ Supers, and who's this idiot joined us? And ranting on about a little £150 guitar.
Oh dear.
And it's time to go now, right? Yeah. Okay, it's getting dark. Okay.
No, it's interesting though, Doug, because we all have this, like, how we end up starting to fall down this rabbit hole, and I mean, yours is not too dissimilar to everyone else's, but sort of from a slightly different angle, perhaps. So yeah, you join up the forum. I think it would have been the Red Special web forum at that point. www.red-special.com /forum. That's the one. And you joined up and posted up, and what sort of feedback did you get at that point? Was it?
It was polite, I think. It was polite. I wouldn't say it was welcoming, but it was polite. I can't remember. Anyway, it wasn't long after that before I like tinkering with things, frustrated engineer and all that. So it can't have been much longer before I thought, right, I'll tinker with this thing and I'll make it better.
Yeah.
And oh, goodness me, 9 years later, I'm still tinkering with things and trying to make our guitars better.
Yeah, because you did actually. I think I remember you posted up. I can't remember if back then you designed. Did you design it again, the Mini May, completely, or did you just design the body, or was it just the neck? My own memory knows something happened, but
yeah, it wears me down just thinking about it. Right, so the original idea was it set off the whole thing. Just the tinkering just suffered from dramatic scope creep, really. But I thought, well, okay. I think I'd seen on a forum that Greg Covington had actually converted a Mini May, but he didn't put the trem on it. I think he just put three, if I recall correctly, three standard size trisonics on it.
That's right, yeah.
I thought, that's a cool idea. But I can't recall now whether I'd seen that before I'd started or partway through after I'd committed myself. But the idea then was to strip down the body of the Mini May, assuming it was going to be a one-piece mahogany body, right? Do you want to get that text, John?
Sorry. Let's start again on that. Sorry, Doug.
All right, but we'll just have a little stretch. Okay, so the original idea was then to strip the finish off the BMG Mini May, assuming it was going to be a solid mahogany body. I could just then stain and lacquer, and put the 3 mini trisonics on it, and put on a knife edge tremolo system.
Yeah.
Now Cesar Beltran in Peru was making all kinds of sort of aftermarket bits of kit for conversions, and one of the nice things he did was a little he called conversion style tremolo, which was a sort of vertical plate that you screw into the vertical part of the tremolo cavity after having routed it out, and it's got a little fulcrum jutting out on it. So but I've got a shout out to Cesar here. He was he was amazing, actually. He made me a scaled tremolo vibrato arm for that guitar, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And he also made 3/4 scale aluminium control knobs, and they just, honestly, both the arm and those knobs just make the aesthetic work on that. Yeah. In my opinion, so really amazing. I don't think he charged me any extra money either. So really a good guy, and people like that who are just happy to customize bits for you. Fantastic. I think Nigel used some of. He converted Burns. It's Nigel Knight's first Burns conversion. He got Cesar to make him a custom sort of curved conversion style tremolo.
Quite possibly,
yeah. So Cesar, great guy. I think he's still selling kits and stuff. So anyway, back to the story. So I started. So I took the neck and the body apart from the Mini May, and then started stripping off the finish. So thick poly lacquer and a lot of grain filler on it, and then once I'd spent a good few hours carefully sanding off the finish, I found that it wasn't a single solid body of any wood. I'm not sure what they were claiming it to be. Alder, possibly. Not mahogany. So unfortunately, it was. I described it as a parquet floor. If anybody knows what that is, it's kind of a wooden floor that's made up of interlocking blocks. So I think it was three or possibly 4 offcuts of wood glued together, which is fine for a budget guitar. But the most unfortunate thing about that was that they were all the wood was different color, or different hue. So I couldn't. It wasn't like 4 bits of white alder. I could have just applied a uniform grain fill and stain to. It was all so it was just oh no, that's gone wrong. Right, next. So at that point I thought, well, okay, let's just make a new body.
Yeah.
Let's just design it on CAD and just get a piece of mahogany block and send it away and get a CNC company just to route me out a body and take it from there. So I did that. I think possibly we shouldn't dwell too much on this story. We could be here in another hour just on this one story. Anyway, long story short, so that was the first piece of scope creep, was getting a new body made for this BMG Mini-May, and then the plan at that point was just to put the tremolo system in, the 3 mini trisonics, and just bolt the original neck back on. And then at some point I discovered that the neck, and this is quite common with budget guitars as well, that the neck for the Mini-May has 2 pieces. The headstock is like scarfed in. It's a scarf joint. It's a very elaborate one, actually, nice curved scarf joint, but it's a 2-piece neck. And something about that displeased me. And I just thought, well, okay, we've gone and got a new body cut. Why not just go the whole hog and just make a new neck? Anyway, right. Let's cut to the chase. So when the job was done, I'd made a new fretboard out of ebony, and the only remaining piece of the original BMG Mini-May was the dual action truss rod.
Nice. So very much Trigger's broom of Mini-May guitars.
And it turned out to be very expensive.
Yeah.
Because I was using a commercial CNC service.
Yeah.
So,
It's a lovely guitar though, and it has, I remember, it kind of made you a name on the forum because...
It was different, wasn't it? It was just, I don't think anybody had been daft enough to do anything like that before.
Completely. And, but I think the way you... if anyone wants more detail on it, head over to dsgb.net, as we said, because Doug's oversimplifying his thought process here on how he went about analysing and going over things. And if you go on his website, or if you're ever fortunate enough to be in the room with Doug and you ask him some questions on choices and decisions he's made, it's not just like how I would make a decision on, oh, that's the easiest thing, so I'll do that. It's very well thought out, not only in manufacturing, but how he's going to do it, what the process is, how the end result's going to look, even before he's cut wood or bolted anything down. And to understand why Doug's done those things and have the opportunity to read that on his website, it certainly explains more as to why Doug ended up with a new neck and a new body.
Yeah, indeed. Thanks, John. Part of that is actually just down to the fact that I wouldn't even pretend to be an amateur luthier, but guitars, they're instruments in the sense that they're musical instruments, but they're precision instruments in a way that if you don't make them correctly, they just won't work properly.
Yeah.
So I think, although I have a natural tendency to want to plan jobs out properly anyway, it's the one tip I would give anybody trying to convert, modify or build a Red Special or any type of guitar is just take your time and plan it out, because it's heartbreaking when you've invested scores of hours making it, and this is especially so for a Red Special, and John's nodding because he's been through the process as well. It's just heartbreaking when you get to the point you've glued and screwed the body together, you've veneered it, which is frightening for an amateur, right? You've veneered it, you've still got to route that channel out for the binding, which is frightening. And then you get through that, and it's taken 5 years off your life, and then you've got to grain fill it and stain it, and then you've got to lacquer it. All those processes are just frightening for the amateur luthier. So the more advanced you get down that process, the more nerve-wracking and frightening it is. You could ruin scores of hours of intricate work. So just guys and girls, anybody who's trying to plan to build a Red Special, just read up everything you can and plan it carefully.
And Doug's got some more great write-ups on DSGB where he has, obviously we've talked about the Mini-May, I was going to say conversion, but conversion is probably not the right word.
I don't know what it is.
Mini-May creation. And then he's also built his own Red Special, which we'll come on to, and he's also helped myself and Luke Holwerder with our own Red Special builds too, and each one of those has a write-up and information and some slightly different media around it. So it's probably, depending on how you take information in, there's probably a suitable way you can do that to learn a bit about how to put one of these guitars together. But so you've built this mini Maydug, and you've got it, and it looks pretty spot on, and it looks pretty epic. And what's the next step for you with that then? Where did that end up taking you?
Well, the first meetup in the kind of new series of meetups that you organised would have been October 2017, yeah.
Yep.
So I think that was the only thing that I had to bring at that point. And I know, you always say it's more about just come along, it's just about the chat,
yep,
and the people and the stories and the banter and just socialising, really, which it is. But given that I'm coming a long way from the south of Scotland, I want to bring something, show people, and having spent all that money and time doing that crazy project, you want to let people see it. It's an amusement. So I brought it along to the 2017 meetup, and people, I think Mike Ride came along, and Andy Guyton was along that year,
yep,
and people were kind enough to show interest in it. I mean, I was mild about it. I was proud of some bits of it, and some bits of it didn't go so well, and hope nobody would notice those. So I brought it along, so there it is, put it on the table, so people had a look at it, and quite amused by it, polite about it, and that was that. And Andy Guyton had a wee go on it. And at some point on the forum, and probably during the chats at that meetup, people were saying, well, Brian might be interested to see this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nah, he wouldn't be interested to see that. Brian, has lots of interests, in charities and things, and he doesn't want to see some kind of crazy interpretation of one of his little throwaway products that he makes. That's a daft suggestion. No. So this went on for a bit, actually. Now I got my timings right. We might have to edit this. No, I'm okay. I'm good. I'm still on track. Right. So, So I think people on the forum leading up to the meetup had said, yeah, Brian might be interested in seeing that. So there was also chat at the meetup. Then at some point we must have got tickets to the 2017 Queen and Adam Lambert tour concerts in the UK and Europe. So we'd bought tickets for the Glasgow gig at the SSE Hydro in Glasgow, and something just clicked. And I thought, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll get in touch with Brian's people and just see if we can set something up. And I just thought, well, there won't be any chance of meeting Brian before or after the gig. I mean, why would he do that? Presumably he's preparing and relaxing and doing what he does to prepare for the concert beforehand, and then winding down afterwards. I'm quite sure he doesn't meet people. So I wrote off to, who was it? I'm just referring to my notes here. So I think I'd asked around a few people saying, well, if I was to try and set this up, how would I go about it? So I think it was Mark Reynolds suggested that I just email Brian's manager, Jen Tunney, via the Soapbox email address on the website. So quite obvious I could have worked that out myself, but sometimes people need to point out the obvious. So I did that. And the approach I took, so I had a few pictures of Andy Guyton holding the guitar. So I just attached one of those to the email and said, look, some people have suggested Brian might be interested in seeing this. The angle I took was, can we just drop it off at the front desk? Brian can sign it at a convenient point. I'll just pick it up from the front desk and go home happy later on. So leaning into look at my notes again. So that was probably around the 21st of November. So the gig, the concert was on the 3rd of December. I can't remember if that's a Saturday or a Sunday. So that's the last I heard of it, as I recall, until the Friday before the concert, when I got a random email. I think this was from Sharon Ashley, his tour PA. And it was clearly addressed to several people, not just me, but I couldn't see who the other recipients were on the email. So I got this kind of random email on mid-morning on the Friday before the concert, first or 2nd of December. And I can't remember how it's worded, but it's basically Brian has agreed to meet you and sign your guitar.
Nice.
Before the concert. And I'm like sort of whooping and we're going to meet Brian May. We're going to meet Brian May. Get your glad rags on. We're going to meet Brian May. So that was an unexpected bonus. I just thought, well, how can I make this easy for Brian? Just as I say, just drop it off, get him to sign it, and get it back at the end, make it easy for him. So that was that.
So you end up rocking up to the gig holding a small version of his guitar. And
Yeah,
you met him before the gig?
we did. Yeah. Now, let me think about my timing. So, the people, your listeners might remember the was it bombings at the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester? Yeah, it's was that earlier on in 2017?
I think that was, yeah.
Yeah, so this was the start of my anxieties with this, because the instructions were to sort of bring the guitar in a little case, which from a distance may resemble the sort of like a weapon, long arm weapon of some
Tommy
sort.
gun.
Yeah, so bring it in, and at a allotted time, turn up at this door of the venue at this time, and you'll be met and taken along to meet Brian. I think it was 7:15 before the concert started at 8. So I felt just very, very we had VIP tickets, but as you know, all that gets you is a couple of glasses of wine and some slightly nicer seats.
With a cushion.
Yeah. So you don't get access to a VIP lounge or anything. So we're just wandering around. We had early entry to the venue, but still wandering around in the kind of that ring around the SSE Hydro, carrying this guitar and feeling people looking at you and feeling quite self-conscious. And I'm just getting more and more worked up. And I just had a feeling this just wasn't going to happen for some reason. Something that was going to be some logistical mess up, and it's just not going to happen. And I just started to get more and more despondent. It's just, it wasn't going to happen. So without going into too much detail again, I think, I can't remember why, but we missed the kind of the allotted time at which the group of us was supposed to meet and go in. And I thought, right, that's it. Now I'm sort of pretty annoyed at this point. I said, right, I knew it wasn't going to happen anyway. This is ridiculous. Stupid idea. Whose stupid idea was this? I don't know whose stupid idea it was. It wasn't mine. Anyway, so at this point, and again, a shout out to the security staff of the venue, and Queen security staff. There was a lady whose name I forget, and we explained our story, showed them the letter and everything else, because we had to go somewhere else, like another building, to get the letters with the little VIP pass things on. So we got those. I go, look, I've got these, and I tried to explain the whole situation, what's going on. I said, look, I'm sorry, for whatever reason I've missed the going in party here, so can we get in? So she radioed the Queen's sort of to a security person, and they came plodding along, and we got in, and got taken to the ante room to meet Brian. And I was I wasn't nervous, but I was a mixture of I was stressed. I was stressed at this point, because I just thought this ain't going to happen. And at the last minute, we got in, and it was all a goer. I'm like, sweaty mess, and God, no, now what's going to happen? Yeah. So anyway, in the event, it turned out great. So there was a small party of about 8 to 10 people, and it turns out that so I was just with my wife Jane, but the other people in the party was a chap called Mike Donald. And his father, if I recall, was Brian's cousin.
Right.
I'm assuming because his mum Ruth was Scottish. I saw him he posted a picture on Instagram on the Monday. I think he'd been out and about, and he had a Clan Fletcher t-shirt on. So I just assumed his mother's maiden name was Fletcher, Ruth Fletcher. So his mum was Scottish. So he was just hooking up with some members of his mum's family. So. Yeah, so I didn't catch. So the only person's name I caught was Mike. Mike said hello to us. So Mike's father was Brian's cousin on his mum's side. But anyway, we just stood in a small room waiting politely for Brian to turn up, and he turned up bang on time, 7:15, dead on time. Let's get those puns in there. Dead on time. He sort of popped his head around the door. And then, so we stood at the back of the room, and he just sort of said hello to all his family. He sort of turned to us and said, "Have you met my family?" And went, "Oh, no, sorry, no, we haven't." We didn't know who they were. I honestly thought they would be sort of local people in a organisation or a charity that he supports. Didn't know who they were. He said, "Have you met my family?" I'm like, "No." So he's greeting these people like he would greet your family you haven't seen for a while. And I was like, "Oh, this is slightly awkward." So we just stood politely. And then Jane, my wife, said at some point, just butt in, just kind of, just otherwise he'll just go and ignore you. And like, no, he won't ignore us. He knows we're here. He said hello, right? So just be polite. That's just clearly members of his family. Just wait. I'm glad I did anyway. It would have been extremely rude and very awkward. But
do you know who I am?
do you know I am? Yeah. So eventually he turned to us and said, "Oh, you're the guy who's made the little guitar. Cool." So we just handed it over, and he had a little strum on it, which was neat. And I just dived in and said, "Hi, Brian, do you mind if we take a few pictures?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, that's fine." So would you sign it? I think that's the main reason we wanted to go. So I'd thought ahead, he planned ahead, and I bought a nice pack of metallic Sharpies.
Nice.
So he pulled out the Sharpie and said, "Oh, do you mind signing the guitar?" So he did, and he posed as well. And we got a lovely shot of him with a really genuine smile on his face. Yeah. And I treasure that photograph because I've heard of times when Brian's been distracted or maybe not in the best of moods, and he's been I didn't want to be the guy who presents Brian with something that he doesn't really like, but he's got to be polite about it because he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
So in the end, he wasn't. He seemed genuinely interested or amused by it. But again, credit to Mike and his family, because I think Brian was quite relaxed because he was meeting members of his family.
Yeah.
So I think, although didn't get really talk to him very much, he was relaxed and in good spirits. So the picture we had of him just posing with the guitar, it's a really genuine smile on his face. So I thought, well, look, I treasure that picture because Brian's seen something I've made, and he seemed genuinely amused by it, and not just like, what is this thing? Smile awkwardly and be polite about it. So that's great.
What a fantastic story, Doug.
Yeah.
And I bet if you'd said to Doug before you had built or went about this venture that it would lead you to meeting Brian May and getting him to sign the guitar, you'd have probably
laughed,
disbelievingly.
Yeah, it's crazy the way things pan out like that, because I think there's Brian's a well-known person, and not just in the field of music now. He's does astronomy and his common decency thing, and he's involved in various animal welfare charities. So he's become somebody of stature in the UK. So I think there must be thousands of people who'd love to meet Brian for various different reasons. To present their musical compositions to him, to talk about business ventures or charity things, and I got to meet him to show him some crazy modified guitar. So that feels a bit strange, but you just got to take your opportunities. And I think the lesson for me is that I probably should have listened to you guys on the forum sooner when they were saying, "Oh, I think that Brian might be interested in seeing this," rather than just going, no, he wouldn't. That's silly, and it'd be awkward.
Definitely
should have listened.
Well,
sooner.
Maybe you should have, but maybe it's better you did it in the way you did it, because it seems like it all worked out. And from what everyone else that I've spoken to, whether that's fans like us or even Ariel, who we had on the podcast, she just met Brian at a book signing and they clicked, and they've been friends ever since. So he's no different than you and I, that he's just a human being with interests, and if he finds common ground, or if he's in the right space, then he's happy to chat and talk and find interest and be interested in you as well. And I think that comes across quite well. But
indeed. Is that the end of that little chapter?
I'll probably cancel my bit there, but edit that out. But so you obviously, amazing. You got to meet Brian May and present him with your small guitar.
Yeah, I think I was trying to box that off by saying I think there are probably a lot more worthy people than me of meeting Brian. But you got to make the most of the opportunities.
Well, and you do in life too. You make your own opportunity, don't you? And you make your own luck by hard work and dedication, and knowing when to take not advantage, but when to say yes to something or when to not. And it sounds like you had the perfect set of situations in front of you to end up in the meeting Brian in the right way.
Well, yeah, and the other thing I feel I need to say as well is because I'm never going to sell that guitar on eBay. It's not like just rocking up to Brian and going, "Hey, can you sign this commercial Red Special," and banging it on eBay, price premium. I made that guitar. It cost me way more to make it than I could ever sell it for, and it wouldn't. Nobody would value it as much as me, even if I could sell it for a reasonable amount of money. So it's just going to stay, with me, and Ben will get it when I'm gone. It's an heirloom, and I don't play it or touch it now.
No.
It's not in a glass case, but it's collecting dust on top of our bookcase. But it's not going to end up on eBay. Me trying to hawk it on eBay for money.
No, well, you made it as well, Doug, and as those of us that know you really value and take a lot of pride and time in what you do, and you don't go making something if it's not right. And it would be right, and you wouldn't want to then part with it because it's what am I trying to say? It's a thing. No.
I'll bail you out there by saying I don't think. I suppose I am a perfectionist. I guess we all are in this endeavor, but I don't think I could ever sell anything. Because in order for me to sell something for money, it would have to be beyond perfect.
Yeah.
I'd have to present it to somebody, and they would go, "Well, that's better than a Guyton. It's better than a KZ." And I couldn't do that. So I couldn't bring myself to make something and charge, not just a guitar, anything. I couldn't. I'll never be a business person. I'm great at spending money, not making it. But I couldn't sell something unless it was just absolutely perfect. Because I wouldn't want anybody to go, "Hey, that's really good, Doug," but I can. So he's whispering to sending people messages going, "Oh, I expected better."
Well, and I think what I was trying to say is there's a manifestation in an object and a thing that exists of all of your time and interest, and because of what it means to you, and that comes across in everything that you do when you provide information or you turn up and show people or explain it and what you do. It's more than. It's a bit like the Red Special to Brian. It's more than what it is, because it's a representation of time and effort and knowledge and the journey and the people you've met and the stories and everything else. Yeah,
that's right. I don't deny that. I'm generally not somebody who kind of attaches sort of sentimental value to things, but it's the older you get, the more you do it, I think. And I'm starting to wane, move more towards doing that.
Yeah.
And part of that is about the large amount of time and effort I've spent making my own Red Special, helping you guys. And I'm now starting to see that these objects do represent, and it's probably more the case with a musical instrument, because you just take the Red Special in isolation. If you didn't know anything about it, Brian's one, you'd look at it and go, yeah, that's a beat up old guitar somebody's made. But the 60 years of history attached to that instrument makes it special. Now, I do appreciate antiques. I like antiques and stuff. And the ones that speak more to me and other people appreciate them are ones with a provenance. Now, whether it's, feel free to cut this out, but our mutual friend Sean Lever had one of the original 40 run of red Guytons, and it featured in the Haynes manual book how to make an electric guitar by Paul Balmer.
Yep. And there's a very famous quote by Sean in that as well.
Oh, thanks for reminding me. I wasn't going to mention. Yes, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, I'll be buried with that guitar. You say? Yeah. Sorry, Sean. Yeah, if this remains in the final cut, apologies.
I do hope that whoever the new current owner is knows that Sean wants to be buried with it. So when Sean dies, they can post it over to be buried with him. Well,
it might well come with a substantial legacy. So somebody's going to have to leave £15,000 to be that guitar to be bought back and buried with Sean. Some tombstone that though. So okay, but. It had a provenance. So Brian had signed the case, didn't he? I think so. It had a provenance.
Yes, it did.
So Sean, it was a nice instrument as well. And at the time he wanted to sell it, I didn't know Sean that well, and I wanted to say, look, please don't sell this guitar, Sean. It's not just any Guyton. It's got a provenance. Yeah. Okay, that increases its value, but it's the only one I know about that's got any kind of extra provenance other than just being a brilliant guitar made by Red Special made by Andy. So I kind of regret not being a bit more forthright with him, but I didn't really know him that well. I wanted to go, Sean, you idiot, don't sell that guitar. Do you realise what you're doing? In three months you'll regret that. So I forget where this conversation started, but it's about provenance and things, objects that acquire more sentimental value and monetary value that when they have a provenance. But maybe you should have kept that. But
maybe you should have. Sean does have another of the original 40 now, though, and he's very happy with it, and he's gigging with it, and he's gone full circle with it again and back to another one. But
it made him realise what he missed. But
definitely.
Anyway, let's move away from that.
So. You and I keep saying, so you've met Brian, you've got the mini guitar made, you're on the forum, you've posted up, you've told us all about your wonderful story of meeting Brian, and we've all gone, ha, told you so. And what's next, Doug? What in your story? I know there's a couple of other things. Did you go full on then into, right, I'm going to make a Red Special replica in its full scale, non-shrunk in the wash?
No. I think I've gone the full the full way from the bottom and just buying the cheapest possible Red Special variant you could get, the little Mini May, and modifying it. I then, again, I think we're looking at now sort of 2013. I think I bought BMG Special, secondhand. It's good condition, and there was a chap in Portugal called Felipe Souza, who was offering pretty high-end conversions at the time. So he put 3 Edison trisonic pickups on it for you, and I'm not sure whose hardware he was using, but he would do a full conversion on the instrument. So it was £1,000 he charged. The amount is irrelevant, just the number that sticks in my head. But so I thought, that looks good. Seen some of his work, it looked quite good. So I acquired a second-hand BMG Special and sent it off, and Felipe converted it and had 3 nice pickups on it and some pretty good hardware. But it just wasn't right. You're laughing, but I think possibly my Red Special kind of gear journey's taken in principle at least, a similar path to yours. It's just, you get something and you spend a lot of money on it and you think, hey, it's good, but it's not. It's not right. It's good, but it's not right.
It's not just mine. Everyone's story is the same.
It's not what you're seeking. It's not what you're searching for. A perfectly good thing, good instrument, good object. It does the job, but it's not right. It's not somehow.
I think that's where the providence comes back into it, and also a little bit of. I think if we were guitar players of the natural sort of like brought up playing a Strat, playing a Telly, playing in a band, playing rock covers, playing guitar, a BMG is a fantastic entry level guitar for lots of people. But once you fall in love a little bit more with the story of the Red Special and how Brian constructed it, and the engineering side of your brain grabs hold of that and what it means to have built it with his father, and then you start looking at some of the techniques and how the guitar goes together, and then what they made it from. That your story, I think, like for me, it piqued my interest almost as much as the sound it made in the Queen and what he did, which is why I started to fall in love with it even more. And I think, knowing you, it's probably you've gone, that's fantastic, but I know it's not quite the same as what it is. And
what it also wasn't is my own work.
Yeah.
So for me, building the Red Special was almost as much about learning about it. It's like a research project, if you like. A few things came together when I built that guitar. So I made a Red Special, but I'd always been fascinated by computer-aided design. The fact you could design something on your computer, and these days, with hobby class CNC machines being reasonably affordable at the price of a pretty good guitar, something's always fascinated me about sort of computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacture. You could make something. Never got into 3D printing, but it's just this idea you can produce something on your computer and then go down to your garage or your shed and then program a machine to make it.
Yeah.
Now I know that this is completely at odds with a lot of craftspeople do, but I've been in engineering for a number of years and nuclear operations and stuff. I've got a technical mindset, so that kind of process appeals to me. I'm not saying that making a guitar by hand doesn't appeal, because I do appreciate antiques and stuff that's been crafted by hand, obviously. But it's just those processes that have intrigued me for years. So the Red Special build project for me was almost as much about analysing the pictures and the X-rays and trying to work out how Brian and Harold had come about the design. Because these guys were super clever and very systematic about the way they go about things. Particularly Harold, obviously, who was an electronics designer like Nigel. So very clever guy, very resourceful, and very systematic in the way they go about producing something. So I think very little about the Red Special happened by accident. Yeah, it was all planned. I mean, things went wrong, and they kind of smoothed over errors and stuff. Obviously, we know that, but it was very carefully planned and executed. I think people maybe don't, even though they were amateur builders and no track record of building instruments, still would have planned it. Even more reason, I think, to plan it out very, very carefully if you can't just do it from skill of craft.
It's interesting because it's something that's not really come up on the podcast, but bearing in mind and taking what you've just said into account, and the fact that they didn't have the reason they went about building the thing was because they couldn't afford to buy one. you'd take even more time. If you've got one piece
Yes.
of wood to make that one cut,
Correct,
you're
yeah.
going to spend even like 3, 4, 5, 6 times
Yeah.
the amount of time measuring that cut out to get that
That's
right.
right. Well, these days, I wouldn't say reclaimed good quality mahogany or oak or anything is easy to come by on eBay, but generally speaking, we've took our chances on eBay and come out with some quite nice pieces of timber.
Yeah.
But there's no eBay in 1964, no internet, no nothing. There's your local library,
Yeah.
your friends and your friends of your dads and this, that, and the other, and your mates who've already got guitars, and you see, you've got one table,
Yep.
one fire surround
Yeah.
that's getting chucked out, and there you go. You got one, well, maybe two chances.
Yeah.
You can maybe get two necks out of the mantelpiece, but generally speaking, you've got to get it right first time, haven't you?
Definitely. And I've not really considered that before in terms of where they were with it and why it was so important and why they've spent so much time making all of those various elements of test rigs and various bits that you see in the book that Simon Bradley has shown over the years, and everything was tested to almost to its nth degree to make sure that it was going to function before it ended up going on the original guitar.
Just like Concorde's landing gear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the same approach, isn't it? It's a very admirable one we can all learn from.
Am I right in thinking Harold did some of the electronics on Concorde?
Yeah, I'm sure I read that in the book or
Yeah.
somewhere he worked on, because I think the story goes, a really poignant story, and I've seen it in one of the documentaries, and that was it when they played was it 3 nights at Madison Square Gardens? Brian
flew them
paid
over.
and I think they still hadn't got a lot of money at that
Yeah.
point as a band, but he flew his parents out on Concorde
Yeah.
to New York for one of the Madison Square Garden gigs,
Yeah.
and I think Brian said it was poignant because Harold had worked on the landing gear system. Was it ILS, the instrument landing system? I'm not sure which part of it, but either the probably instrument landing system electronics for Concorde.
And I think that was the night when Harold said to Brian, "Actually, son, I understand it now." So it's kind of that full circle, like the nice end to the story.
Whichever documentary that's on, I was nearly in tears. Brian nearly broke down on camera, didn't he, when he was saying that? It's like my father. He finally got validation from his father for doing something that initially they didn't approve of. Yeah, it's like, now I get it, son. It's very emotional.
It would have been massive as well, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Some people, I mean, I have a great relationship with my father, but some people never get that kind of validation from their father. Something I've tried to rectify with my children. Just my son Ben has just passed his grade 5 saxophone. I've just tried to, without going, overboard, just let them know we're very proud of him for that. We're a bit more modern in our communications these days, but I think in the past, people didn't have great relationships with their parents back in the 50s and 60s. Some things weren't said until after, whoever has died, and then you're left not knowing whether they were proud of you or not, when in fact they probably were. Yeah,
well, you didn't have that opportunity, did you? And things were communication and mental health and those things were much more, they're still getting over the Second World War, weren't they? And
correct,
a lot of people there living with things
that's right, a British Reserve, best not talked about. Different times, but no, it's amazing, really. But so you finished the Mini May project. What you've had the Felipe Sousa customized BMG conversion, which you then decided you weren't happy with. I think at one point you bought an RS custom guitar. I've done everything, haven't I? It's crazy. Yeah, so everything's got a story, isn't it? Yeah, I bought now then, so it was an eBay thing. This was so I'd come back from a back shift or an evening shift. So I used to, when I worked shifts, we had a 3-shift pattern. So the evening shift would go from 3 p.m. till 10:30. So we'd come home and have a beer or two occasionally, and go on eBay. Always dangerous to go on eBay when you're
tired and inebriated.
Tired and inebriated. So there's a chap in, I can't remember, is it Dean? I can't remember. He was in the West Midlands somewhere. Don't think he's active in any of the forums, but there's a chap in the West Midlands, not Luke Timmins, but Dean something, I can't remember his second name, was selling a RS custom guitars 64 Supreme. So this is one of Everett Wood's creations. Very finely made guitar, very nicely made instrument, and I think he was wanting somewhere in the region of 3,000 for it, which is perfectly fair price on the second-hand market for that high-end replica. And they don't come up for sale hardly at all. In fact, not in. I don't know how many he's made, but very few come up for sale in the UK.
Yeah, I saw one. So Woody Thomas had one I might have even been his, and that was sold literally this week for So if you wouldn't figure out when the podcast was recorded, you can probably think back to when you saw that on Facebook. But they really don't come up that often. But
no. So I think I ended up paying about $2,750 for it, something like that. Which I think anything under 3,000 for any of the high end. Well, not Clayton, obviously, they're different, but any of the high end Red Specials is a good price. So just bung it on the credit card and got that.
And it arrived at home.
Yeah.
What was that like? Because was that the first sort of time you'd seen an accurately blockboard built?
Yeah, definitely.
Veneered.
Yes.
What was that like opening the case?
Oh, that was phenomenal. I mean, the case is just funny you should mention the case. The case was lovely. It was one of these slim rectangular case, G&G, I think.
Yeah.
Wonderful. It had like orangey coloured fur lining. It was magnificent. Absolutely magnificent case. It was just a wonderful thing. I've still got lots of pictures of it. But I don't know, I eventually sold that on to a guy called Glenn Mcateer. Let's give Glenn a shout out. And that was, it's interesting how these stories pan out. So Glenn's from Barrow-in-Furness, which is the southernmost large town in Cumbria, where I'm originally from. I don't know if people in the UK likely heard of Carlisle and Barrow-in-Furness. That's where they build the UK's nuclear submarines at Barrow-in-Furness. So he lives in Barrow-in-Furness. Anyway, I had that, I can't remember, couple of years, 2.5 years. Decided that wasn't quite right for me either. I don't know why though. It's a wonderful guitar. That Everett deserves a lot of credit for making those guitars. They really were finely made. Couldn't fault it at all. But I decided I want to move it on, as you do. I don't have to tell you that. So I put it on eBay, and I wasn't really active on the RS forum at that time. So I just put it on eBay again. I wasn't seeking to make any money on it. I think I ended up getting back pretty much what I paid for it. But well, I shouldn't say, but we did a deal outside eBay. So there was a that's me.
Careful.
eBay coming after me. Yes. So we did a deal outside eBay, and I said, "Where do you live, Glenn?" He said, "I'm Barrow-in-Furness." I said, "Oh, that's interesting. I'm from West Cumbria." And well, how about I drive down? We meet somewhere not quite halfway, but there's a nice garden centre outside Carlisle. It's a reasonable drive for you. So he gave me a deposit, and a bit of risk involved for him. I don't know, probably not so much for me, but I drove down, took my son down, and met him in a garden centre car park in Carlisle, Houghton Hall Garden Centre in Carlisle. And he was awestruck. I think he was really appreciative of that guitar. So it was just nice to sell it on to somebody who really treasured it. And I think he still got it. He follows me on Instagram. So there you go, Glenn. Shout out, nice guy. And and he paid me cash. And I don't tend to deal in cash at all, but I had like 2,400 quid cash, and my son Ben was, I don't know, 5 or 6, and he said, "Look, you'll probably never see that much cash ever again, Ben." So we immediately we dropped into Carlisle and paid it into the bank. But that was great. So that all worked out. Both of us took a bit of a risk, but I moved it on, and Glenn really appreciates that guitar.
It's always nice. I mean, and that's the great thing. I know you said Glenn wasn't necessarily overly active in the community, but the great thing of the community of people around the Red Special is that in general everyone is a nice guy, and it's nice to help people out and have that community spirit. I don't think Glenn has got a lot of disposable income, so that was probably quite a big purchase for him, but so it's important that, I mean, I took a little lamp down and also headphones or something. I can't remember what it was, the iRig. Said, "Look, Glenn, just check it out, I don't just give me the money and run. Check it out, inspect it, make sure you're quite happy." Well, he was quite happy with the sale. So it was quite, it was quite a significant outlay for him. So it was important to me that I didn't fleece him at all. He felt he paid a good price, and the instrument was in good condition, and he's happy with it. Oh, ideal. So where do you end up? So like, what's next then? Because I'm trying to think of the timings. At what one, I'm looking forward to ribbing you about how long it took you to build your own special, but you then at some point, you're still active on the forum, but maybe not so much, and then you started building your guitar before, is it 2016?
Yeah, the sort of the design and research part of the project was quite drawn out as well before I actually started doing anything. So there was a lot of analysis of the, all gets a bit hazy, but there was a lot of the kind of X-ray and photograph analysis to try and work out what was going on. Oh yeah, just before we move off the RSCG as well. So I started the design process for the Red Special replica build while I still had that RSCG. So there was always this banter around the forum about, oh, that's a nice guitar, but the upper horn is off. The shape is wrong, wasn't it? That was a standing joke. The upper horn's off. Yeah. And then the other thing was the headstock shape as well. You see quite a few really good Red Special replicas, including the commercial ones, and just the corners, the widest part of the headstock aren't quite right. So I started off trying to work out that was the bit of design that I started, or the bit of the analysis that I started. I thought, right, I'm sick of this unhelpful banter going around. I'm going to try and work out how they designed this thing. So I'm getting pictures of, and I'm sure I used some of the pictures that Chris Mahoney took when he met Brian, saw the Red Special, and trying to work out. They must have. What was the process they used? They must have used circles or something, and it must conform to some shape, a cruciform or whatever it was. So I just measured. I turned around and I had the RSCG on a stand, and I just got my ruler out. And at some point, I must have realised that obviously the whole thing was designed in imperial feet and inches, whatever. So flip the ruler over to the imperial side and just stuck it over the headstock at the widest part, and it's like, was it 3 inches, 76 mil? What says it? 3 inches or 4 inches? 3 inches, I think. 20. 3 inches. 3 inches. That's exactly 3 inches wide. Yeah, that can't be a coincidence. 3 inches, and it's kind of quite rounded. And I'm like, I wonder if they've just had a 3-inch diameter circle. Yeah. Like, yeah. And I looked at the tip, and it's like, yeah. I wonder if the tip's just like whatever it was, a 1.5-inch diameter circle. And I thought, I wonder if they just like stacked circles together to make that headstock. And the more I stared at it, I thought, that's what they've done, the blighters. And there was just this huge light bulb moment, which I don't think I'd had since I was doing my PhD. It's this big light bulb moment. It's like, they've just designed this guitar just by like using overlaying circles and arcs and lines and stuff. And it was like tremendously exciting. I felt like I cracked the code. Not that there is a code, but it's just this big moment of realization. And okay, so I'll bend over and take the ribbing about how long it took for all the different parts of designing it, analyzing it, and building it. That's fine, but I dread to think how much longer it would have took if I hadn't made that realization there. Because then I did the headstock thing and then moved straight onto the body, and like, well, they must have done the same thing with the body, and the horns must be like circles and this, that, and the other. Oh, and the body looks like an ellipse. I wonder, measure the cross. It's round about just under 14 inches, isn't it? But yeah, so that was quite thrilling, actually. It's the thrill of discovery.
Yeah, and it's quite an infectious thing. I remember looking at, but just when the information was starting to come out a bit more, and there's lots of different photos, and I'd be up all hours of the night staring at photos for weeks, just not getting any sleep because I'm staring at photos of the Red Special, trying to uncover the secrets and mysteries that are sat there. And when you finally feel like you've cotton on to something, it's so exciting because you're like, it is like, oh, I've cracked the code. I know something. It's I need to now tell everyone and document it.
Yeah, maybe it's a cracking that implies that it was some sort of secret code, but I think it's more about, I felt that was the point at which I'd almost got into the mindset of these two really clever guys that made this unique guitar. It's like, I'm in their head now, I can see what they've done, it's so logical, and then, of course, with the benefit of hindsight, once something's explained to you, it becomes obvious. Yeah. So that was that point. There was this warm glow came over. I thought, right, okay, I've now got a method. I'm in their heads. I see what they've done. I can deploy it to get the right design. And I just then moved forward with a much more happier place. Yeah. Rather than struggling along, and it would have been a less satisfying process, and it would have took much longer, and it would have been wrong, to be honest. Maybe not badly wrong, but it would have been wrong if I hadn't made those realizations.
And then I remember another post, similar sort of theme, but you came up with this theory about what they'd used to draw around.
That's a laugh. Yeah, that is worth saying, because that's neither proven nor disproven, so I can claim whatever I want. But it wasn't. I forget who said it. I'm going to credit. I'm going to shout out people. Matt Hutchinson, who's a terrific player. He's got a YouTube channel of his own. Basics 4. Yep. So Matt's a brilliant player, and he's a great builder as well, isn't he? He's got a great track record of building. He does. Pretty good, and he's got a tremendous ear and a tremendous eye for detail.
He certainly does.
Yeah. So anyway, Matt, and whether it's true or not, but I'm going to credit Matt with it because that's how my memory's working. And he had mentioned, it was just in passing somewhere, it's maybe just one post out of 17,000 posts that I saw, that there was somebody somewhere, there was an urban myth or something that it feels silly almost articulating it, but Brian and Harold had laid laid their paper out on the dining room table, and drawn round pieces of his mum's dinner service, the prize dinner service. And I was amused and captivated by this. I believe it. I don't know whether I believe it or not, but maybe they did that initially just to roughly sketch it out, and then once they did the working drawings, it was properly done with compasses and rulers. I don't know. It's a cute idea, but I'm not sure whether I totally believe that. But I did put a few pictures up on the forum, mainly just for amusement value, actually. I got some our own various different bits of dinner service, egg cups and saucers. They're all kind of like imperial sized, feet and inches things, and overlaid it. And I found a oval serving platter, which it's not exactly the same size as the oval, but it's suspiciously close to the it's around 14 inches by 11. I'm going to say 11 and quarter, 11 3/4 inch ellipsoid, which very closely fits the main part of the body of the Red Special. I think this is an urban myth that's worth perpetuating, whether true or not, because it is brilliant.
Is there a post about this on DSGB?
There is not a post on DSGB.
I think there should be.
Well, I'll think about that, because I'm trying to keep my website pretty straight down the line and not have jokey posts on it. But there is on the probably is on Facebook and some of the legacy stuff up there for
it's definitely on the old-fashioned Red Special forum for sure.
Yeah.
So it made us all chuckle for a while, and I think.
But nobody can prove it or disprove it. No, that's got to be the basis of a really good urban myth, surely.
Well, definitely, unless we ever get the chance to ask Brian, and then we'll see if he can confirm or deny the dinner plate.
I don't think it's worth asking, because he's forgotten so much stuff over the years, hasn't
he? Maybe not.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on.
So you've gone off and you've started your CAD work, and you've started to get yourself in the mind space of Brian and Harold, was you start to try and design your own version of the guitar in a digital space so that you can recreate that. And I think at that point you were posting between the Red Special forum and the Red Special library and trying to gain information from a few sources and bounce ideas off people and validate what you were doing. Yeah,
that's right. So I joined up Matt Wickham's Red Special Builders Association forum, I think he called it, which kind of appealed, because I think the main Red Special forum, there wasn't any kind of really strong build threads, not much technique. At that point, I was quite interested in the technical angle and techniques for building and stuff. So I kind of left for a bit and sort of went across to that RSBA forum. I was on that for well over a year, just knocking around theories, and just I posted up threads about how my build was going, and I'm trying to think if that's where there's a chap in America, John Griffin, who's a friend of Luke Holwerder's. I can't remember now if that's where I first came across Luke Holwerder, actually. I'm going to say it is. I think John Griffin was certainly on there, but this is also about the kind of time when I'm starting to think, look, forums aren't really where I want to be. It's not really the right you're gonna have to edit this bit. It's not really the right way of presenting the information I wanted to present. And I think I was quite interested in having sort of a pure chronological narrative, I suppose, whereas with a forum, obviously you post something and then there's people dive in and there's a discussion, and it's like, hey, I just wanted to post 8 consecutive posts about my series of things that I'm doing, and it's just like, oh, this isn't quite working for me, and I wasn't quite getting the sort of, I don't know, people validation, but people, the interaction I was looking for in RSBA. It was always like me posting stuff, and then other people go, oh, that's interesting, and people going, yeah, but that's wrong, mate. You need to rethink that. There wasn't that kind of checks and balances, I suppose, of other people going, I'm pretty sure that's not correct, Doug. Do you want to have another look at that? That kind of interaction, I suppose. So it's around about sort of early 2017 I started thinking about doing something different. And that's, I guess, we've drifted off topic a bit, but that's when I started looking for a different way of presenting the information. Facebook, that's how the Facebook blog came up.
Yeah, which is very well liked and very well followed, and you started detailing out your thoughts around building your own Red Special, and then ultimately when you started building it and posts and information and whatnot, and you did actually end up, correct me if I'm wrong, rather than outsourcing the CNC work for your own Red Special, you bit the bullet and bought a CNC machine and had to learn the processes of that and set that up in your garage to create your guitar, and then learnt around all the different techniques and information and bits and pieces, and how to hold bits of wood down to the bent of the bed, and start learning how to cut things out in different
and that was a whole other source of I don't know, it was a welcome distraction or not. Again, if you're a frustrated engineering type person, there's nothing better than you like just tinkering away in your garage with either your MGB GT from 1976 or your CNC machine or whatever it happens to be, your old Mangle or your vintage tractor. So we all like doing. So that was a whole other source of distraction, and that machine took quite a bit of effort to get licked into shape to do what I wanted to do. But when it was, so that was about, I think I got that in October 2016.
Yeah,
and we're not really exactly kind of following a strict timeline here, but we can pop some dates in. So it was October 2016 when I acquired that Stepcraft machine, and I don't think I was in a position to start making anything meaningful until getting on for late spring 2017.
Yeah.
I think my first attempt at making a neck, and then there's a YouTube video on this. I'm going to say sort of maybe October, November 2017. So around about that time, sort of 2015, 16, there was kind of design going on and getting the machine and getting that set up. So the whole process became quite drawn out.
Yeah, and I rib you for it because it's an easy target, but you certainly started off with like a blank canvas, so to speak, and almost re-engineered the guitar how you saw it, trying to base that off of how Brian and Harold would have done it, creating that in a 3D space.
Yeah, can we just dwell on that a little bit, because there's an interesting thing that I don't know. Let's see your opinion on it, but on the Red Special, so we've seen an original design sketch, which is in the book. People are familiar with that, but it doesn't really look a lot like how the Red Special turned out. So there's something in between. Now, I think in the book they say that they made some working sketches and they stuck them on the wood, and then they chiseled out round the outline. So it seems to me, and there would only be one, set of working sketches. Yeah. So the design drawings, if you like, are gone. So what I tried to do with my design was recreate those for myself. Because there's to go into CNC, you need a strong design, and that starts with a design sketch, and then you work for CNC CAD. You work it up into a 3D model, but you've got to have the sketch there, right? And that's built from something. So, what I tried to do, because I felt it was a necessary process to do, was to try and recreate what their working drawings that they must have had. The drawing set that they must have then stuck onto the wood, that they then
cut out and
just destroyed, because it was they chiseled around it to cut the body and the neck. So that never gets discussed, I think. But that surely, I'm not wrong in assuming that. Is that correct? That they must have like taken that original design sketch, worked up a working drawing, which was then quite different. I don't know if that still had the F hole on it, and then that's lost, if you like.
It's something I've never really considered myself before, Doug, and I've never heard of, from all the various different conversations I've had with people over the years, whether or not that's how they did it or not.
Yeah. I remember just having a brief message exchange with Greg Fry about this, and I can't remember how it started, but he did. There was one quote that, again, it validated. I thought, oh, look, I'm on the right track. He said, "My working drawings had circles drawn all over them." So I thought, right, I know I'm on the right track with this. I mean, I suppose it's how you would necessarily construct most simple objects. You'd use arc segments and line segments. So he he'd done the same thing. He'd probably taken the photographs. He wouldn't have had the X-rays at that point. I don't think they're done for Guyton.
No, they were done for Fryer, and then they submit them.
Okay.
I think for Guyton later on.
Right,
But,
okay.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's
So obviously he took, when he made his 3 guitars, he had to obviously go through the same process and make a set of working drawings. Yeah.
Interesting. No, so you've done that, and then you're busy beavering away, creating your CAD drawings, and then you've got your CNC machine, and I think you become more active on although you've got the Doug Short guitar blog on Facebook, you suddenly become a bit more active on the forum again, and you rock up to the first meetup I arranged in 2017, did we say?
That's right, yeah.
With your mini guitar, and you meet Andrew Guyton, and we get to watch that lovely video, which has never been seen again. And
I so wish he would publish that.
Yeah.
I know he's got to get Brian's approval, and he said that in his podcast, but that needs to be seen. It was a thriller.
Yeah, it was. It's
you sell tickets for that.
I wish I had, because I could have bought several Guytons for that. But
no, that was amazing, wasn't it?
It was. It's such a treat to have, and I think that meetup was the first one you'd attended. Yeah.
Now I want to say a little bit about that as well, because I'm really not a very good guitar player at all, and I can strum with the rest of them. But I'm pretty much a bedroom amateur player, and I would never get up in front of anybody and play. I'm just, even if I was technically proficient, I don't think I'd have the confidence. But so that would have been for about 5 years I'd been involved with your community, and I knew full well there's some extremely talented musicians on there, guys like Mike Ride. I mean, I remember listening to Mike's version of March of the Black Queen.
Yeah,
it's just mind-blowing. The whole mix. Yeah. Imagine how complicated that mix is. Just the studio mix, and he's recreated that. Just really, I mean, Matt, and even the people who build, like Matt and Mark Reynolds and stuff, they're good guitar players. They're in bands, So I thought, goodness me, I'm not sure I want to come to this, as people are intimidating, intimidatingly good musicians and builders. Nobody. I was like, oh my goodness. But I plucked up the courage to come. And I'm glad I did, because it was just great. You get that warm. You've experienced it. You get that warm glow from being with like-minded people. And I've got to say, if anybody feels a bit like me, that in a bit of trepidation, they fancy coming along to one of these meetups in Reading, but they may be a little bit intimidated, just don't be. Right? Everybody was really friendly and welcoming with me, even though I can't play the guitar very well. And at that point, I just made a fairly daft creation. But everybody's really friendly, and it is about banter and socializing, and people who can bring gear as well.
Yeah.
So there's a chance to see nice gear, and I will always try to bring stuff I've made to show it off, because I'm all the gear, no idea. But if people who've got good gear should bring it, and people can see it. But it's just a social event, and people are friendly and welcoming. Nobody's judging anybody else's builds or work or playing or anything.
We're all there for the same reason, I think, and that's the love of the guitar. And what a fantastic thing to have in the world is a place where it doesn't matter whether you can play or not, or whether you're a builder or just an avid Queen fan, or you love Badgers or Brian May. You can come along, and you're in a room full of people that appreciate you for who you are and what you believe in. And what I like about them as well is a lot of this kit that we talk about you can't purchase in a shop. You cannot go to your local music centre and buy a treble booster and a Vox AC30 and whack it up full volume and go, I like that one, because they're just not there. But at the meetup, you have pretty much most years almost every type of bit of kit Brian's used, and you can listen to it and go, I really like that. And it kind of gives you that opportunity to hear it for yourself and hear the things that we then talk about. And most importantly, it breaks down the barriers of the written communication that can often be misread on forums.
Oh, absolutely it does. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's strange, that, isn't it? You can say something, have a bit of a poke at somebody. It's totally innocent. It's taken the wrong way on a forum. And then, but, in the bar of the Calcott at 11 o'clock at night after a few beers, everybody's just falling about laughing. So,
No, it's a great thing, really. And I mean, I'm so glad you came. I remember having a chat with you. You were still using your wife's handle on Facebook at that point.
That's right. Yeah, I dipped a toe in the water of Facebook.
You were complaining about the length of distance it was, and I think I was probably a bit frustrated. And I said, "Well, I don't even book it when near where I live. I got to drive for 3 hours to get."
What do you think's in it for me? Okay, I know. Yeah, forgetting. Actually, this guy from Devon that buys and sells all these gear, it's quite a long way for him too.
But no, it's a great thing. I'm so glad you came, because immediately you could see with yourself that, like, I wouldn't say it was like a light bulb moment, but you're in a room surrounded by people and you felt comfortable and you became part of the you come to the meetup and instantly you become more part of the forum because you're a known person now.
Yeah, it's no no joke to say. After that, I felt that first meetup was life changing. It's probably a bit much, but a bit strong. But it was. I just went home and like elated. I think we all did, didn't we? It was like there wasn't much happening at that meetup. You know, there was a bit of a scratch band thing. But I mean, I was just pleased to meet you guys in person. And the highlight, I think, from a gear perspective, is Andy Guyton came. Yeah. Oh my goodness, Andy Guyton! He's brought some he's brought three of Brian's guitars and one of Pete Ballard's guitars.
Yeah, the badge guitar. Yeah.
Like, this is just this pokey little meetup. It was like 20 of us in this village hall, and Andy Guyton, it's just Brian May's guitars. Wow! But again, people were just really friendly, and I went home like, cloud nine. I was elated. It was amazing.
It's great fun, isn't it?
Yes.
It energizes you to carry on with these projects.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you started on your, I think chronologically, you then started on your build, because I remember, I think obviously from the excitement and elation of the forum, or the meetup, you've gone home and you started cutting stuff out on your CNC machine and practicing and tooling up and getting the woods. And I know you made your own block board because you can't buy the size block board that you wanted to make it with. And
that's right.
You started posting up all of this information, and I just spent hours poring over.
I'm glad somebody did.
It was me.
One person. That one. Oh, thanks, John.
No, because I mean, it's just so interesting looking at it from someone else's perspective, and some of the challenges that we've had in the forum purchasing blockboard. You can only buy like 18mm blockboard, and it was horrendous. And that was what was available, so that's what people used to do. And then they like triple veneer it to try and get it to the right thickness and all of those things. And you just gone, actually, if I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it completely, and I'm going to make what I need it to be so that I've got it.
That's right. And how much blockboard did you make for your build?
Never you mind, Dave.
Chewed up. Sorry, I'd like to go on record saying my CNC machine chewed up quite a few pieces of the blockboard John made for his build.
Well, it's a very hungry CNC machine that day.
It was, yeah. But you got some good practice in making blockboard.
I did. Yes, I did. No, but it's part of it, isn't it? It's all part of the story of your guitar.
Well, yeah. I think I bought some quite expensive spruce wood for the center of that blockboard, and it's the kind of wood that's really intended for bracing bars and acoustic guitars. But I decided I wanted, with all this effort, I don't want to just put big shed DIY store. Not there's anything actually wrong with that. If you pick and choose amongst the white timber in a DIY store, you can actually get some nice stuff, not bowed and not splintered and nice grain. So not disrespecting that. That's probably the way for you should do it, because 60s blockboard was fit for purpose, but it's not a quality item in the sense it's going to be used for making a guitar or any other type of musical instrument. But I decided I wanted top-notch wood in that blockboard, and I think the main reason for that was I was quite paranoid about it bowing. I mean, when you've made it, when it's so solid, isn't it? That was quite an ignorant thought, really, because there's no way, once you've sandwiched it and compressed it and that wood dry, it is so solid. But I was just concerned when it was cut. You're not left with actually very much, are you?
No, not.
And I was quite concerned if I didn't use really nice aged wood with nice tight graining in the core of the blockboard, it might somehow warp. So it's another one of these things I've over-engineered out of ignorance, I suppose, but to try and ensure myself against having problems like 3 years down the line with the whole thing just the veneers splitting, which hasn't happened, thankfully. But
no,
it's because I don't play it very much. But it's not warping itself to bits after 3 or 4 years.
Well, and it's looking at the problem with what you've got, and if you're going to go to the length and breadth of actually making blockboard, you might as well look into blockboard construction and try and make it the best you can, because you don't want it to go to all that effort and then that be the reason that it fails. And
I think certainly this project's taught me a lot of things, but it's taught me quite a respect for wood, being a natural material, and you shouldn't waste it. And now I'm a bit of a chucker away of things. I don't like clutter, so things that I think are not useful, in the past I've tended to recycle or get rid of them, and now I keep all my scrap timber, and I've used so much scrap timber for practice, staining things and drilling things and carving things, that so it's taught me a bit of more of a respect for wood in all its forms, both engineered timber and slabs of lovely mahogany.
Yes. And so your you're building your own guitar, and at some point, somehow, and we think we know how, a gentleman from Phoenix, Arizona gets in touch with you about the potential for maybe you helping him with his own build, his own dream of owning the Red Special. He doesn't want to buy one because, as we all know from listening to Luke and Luke's work from various different elements, Luke's kind of a do it yourself and do it right because you can't trust anyone else. And Doug, all credit to you, you're not even finished with your build, and you're sort of helping Luke out all the way across the States.
Yes, Luke worms his way into a lot of things, doesn't he? He's a great guy. Yes, random guy from Arizona. And I figured this might happen at some point. People just, you see what you're doing, you post on forums, and random people start asking you for help. And you think, look, sorry, I'd love to help you, but I don't want to. No, I'd love to help you, but it's like just some random person, you know, 5,000 miles away, and you might be an idiot, and it might be this, and you might, but I don't know, it's just something about the way Luke approached me. It was intelligent, and I thought, actually, this guy seems like the real deal. Yeah, we'll see where this goes. And I think so he had a plan, and the plan was to go to sign up for some woodworking lessons at a local community workshop, a makerspace in Phoenix, and they had a big large footprint shop bot, 8x4 maybe. Yeah, it's pretty large footprint industrial shop bot machines. I thought, hey, this sounds like a cute idea. So, this guy sounds resourceful. He's got a plan, and I was quite taken and intrigued by the idea of somebody making a twin, not quite a clone, but their interpretation of my design as it existed at the time, somewhere halfway around the world. Yeah. So I thought, well, give this a shot. Glad I did, because Luke's, he made the most of that for sure. And Sir John's already referred a few times to my involvement with his and Luke's builds, but on my website, so there's a couple of pages under a drop-down menu called Collaborate, and just spend a couple of minutes on this. So the section on my my Red Special build is quite involved. It's quite technical.
Very, right? Yep.
So, and that's that. Now, so Luke's presented his build in a more entertaining way. So he's got this series of 13 short, maybe like sort of 3 minutes kind of thing ish, videos, and Luke's I don't know what he calls himself. He's an audiovisual artist. He makes films, and he was in a band. Got his CD. It's just quite nice. He's quite very professional. He does lots of things very well, as we both remarked.
He certainly does.
So he's made these 13 really professionally made, very entertaining. But they're also he's managed to convey all the processes involved with making the guitar, but in an entertaining way. So if you want to, I'd recommend you watch them. There's an embedded video on the Collaborate section of my website for each of his videos, obviously on YouTube. And he's got his own Facebook guitar build page still. So his videos present how to make a Red Special in an entertaining way.
Definitely.
Right. So, and the page under Collaborate for your build, try to present it in a different way. It's more light-hearted. It's not technical in any way. So as John alluded to earlier in the podcast, if he doesn't cut it out, you've got, go and have a look, because you've got all the, I do things my way, and it's tremendously detailed, and the pictures are not particularly they're not artistic. They're just it's a factual process. You've got Luke's way of putting things, which is entertaining, and he's got some nice little Easter eggs in there. His little dogs appear in there. It's brilliant, actually, really brilliant.
Poncho.
It's totally different. I'd never seen anybody do anything like that before, so it's worth shouting about.
When it's such a testament to Luke's videos. It explains some of the more tricky processes to explain in either written communication or through plans in a very visual thing where you go, that's how it works. He's done a great job of that sort of explanation of a very difficult to grasp concept. So if you're new to this and you don't quite understand some of the written plans, certainly watching one of Luke's videos on how the knife edge and tremolo works, or the knife edge tremolo system works, kind of explains it very quickly in about 3 minutes, and you go, so that's how it works.
Yes. So I've had a wee go the last few months of at producing some YouTube videos, and let me tell you, it's not easy. It's not as easy as it looks. And go and have a look, and you'll realise how not easy it is. So I've put a few videos out there. So I've got another one planned. Don't know when I'll get it out, but I'm gonna. Basically, I've still got a piece of John's blockboard from his build. I'm gonna veneer it, and I'm gonna grain fill it.
You gonna make me another guitar, Doug?
No, I might make another neck. I'll make another neck, but not whole. So I'm gonna record a video with. I suppose it's an instructional, isn't it? So do a bit of narrative, and I'm just gonna show you how to veneer the blockboard, grain fill it, stain it, and then I'm gonna just show you how to work with rustins, make up the rustins.
Yep.
Dye the rustins. Maybe we'll come on to that a bit later if we've got time. But you can use a powder dye to stain the rustins. And I use that to repair part of my neck with a mahogany. Yeah. It's quite red, but I think you've learned from the process of getting your Time Warp special, John, that Brian stained the rustins, clear rustins, black.
He did, yep.
And used that to coat the fretboard.
That's right, yeah.
I've done a little, I suppose, instructional video on the one with the fretboard marker dots, and I'll show you a couple of techniques for staining. One of them was black super glue, actually. The other one's just using a spirit dye. Neither of those that Brian actually did, but I'll try and cover the use of rustins and the dyeing the rustins in that video. Yeah.
That'd be a good one to watch out for. It might well already be out by the time the podcast comes out, just because of my slow editing skills. And if it is, we'll put a link to it, so go and check it out. Either look forward to it or go and find it.
Go and laugh at it.
Yeah. So you've decided to help Luke, and much to your own detriment in a way, because you're on your own journey building your own Red Special, and then you've passed over some information to Luke, and Luke's kind of cracked on, and within a bit of a shorter space of time, taking your information and finished his guitar.
Well, I think he had a bit more time to devote to it. Like I was still working shifts at the time, so just another thing as well. I up until just over 2 years ago, I was working shift operations until middle of April 2019. So obviously you get programmed rest days in a 5-week cycle, but I made a pact with myself not to work on my guitar when I was either tired, recovering, or not in the right frame of mind for it, because you just know it'll just go wrong.
And it does anyway when you're in a good
place. And
it
does anyway, even when you are in a good place. But I think Luke and I were a little bit naive. I think we were both quite excited by the fact that there was the potential of me just flinging over some CAD files. And it really probably should have been this way, but we still, neither of us quite understand why it didn't work out. But not only was, we were separated by the Atlantic Ocean and most of America, just the files, even though they're in a kind of standard format, STL format, we both thought it would just be as simple as me just flinging over the files, and with a bit of explanation of how I got it to work on my machine, that he could sort of pretty much do the same thing in this makerspace with these Shopbot machines and Phoenix. But he just struggled, and it was like he was fighting the interface, fighting the machine. It was so dispiriting. Anyway, that's how it was. Luke overcame that. We both overcame that, but there was, just like you said, when you're interacting with Luke on a daily basis, but with your build, it was kind of the same when we were doing that, and it's like, oh my goodness, it just consumed so much time.
It certainly does.
But the end result justified all that.
Definitely, and it's one of those things that once you've got the finished thing, or very close to finished thing, all that pain and frustration and stuff disappears, because you've got this fantastic thing you built in front of you, and you can go, wow, this thing looks like what it's meant to look like. And
and you learn so much. I think you'd admit as well, now you've got your Time Warp, you probably don't play your own build, but I had a look at both earlier, but your own build still looks pretty good. But you thought you knew a lot about the thing, but you learn more when you build it, don't you?
Definitely. In certain things, you get these little moments where you go, so that's why that's like that. Or, I mean, I think the big takeaway for me from all of this, and, we'll come on to maybe how we bumped into each other on Rock Beach nigh on 2 years ago. And you and I discussed you helping me build my guitar because you wanted to help someone else in this country and use your CNC machine rather than the makerspace, and how that whole story sort of came about, which is beautifully written in my my bit on this. Not beautifully written at all, but which is written up on your website. But the one thing I take from this whole thing is we were using CAD, and myself and you and Luke's input a little bit into his own experience with building and your experience and my knowledge and what I'd learned. And between the three of us and the power of the computer or computer-aided design, and it still outfoxed the three of us, and we learned so much. And the respect that you have once you've decided to dive into this for Harold and Brian and what they created back in the 60s with a 15-year-old son and an engineering father with hand chisels and files and screwdrivers and planes and bits of old wood lying around the house. It's just phenomenal that they even finished it, let alone created arguably the most iconic guitar in the world.
And some people who are not Queen or Brian May fans, and this is fine, they don't like the look of the Red Special. And I can see that you could look at it and think it's a bit of a piece of junk. It's beaten up, for 60 years of use, and it's made out of bits of junk. But I think, and we all think, it's aesthetically beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think, and you touched on this with Andy in his podcast, I think. But you can look at pictures of that. We call it the volute. I think the bit that when the fat part of the neck, the main part of the neck, blends into the headstock. Yeah. I'm just redesigning that at the minute because I'm making quite a few improvements to my neck, but it's challenging at design. But just when you analyze it to try to take it from a physical object or a picture into CAD, you have to think very carefully, obviously, about how it exists in 3D space. But it's beautiful. Yeah, it's aesthetically beautiful about how all those lines blend in. And I know I've read a little bit about car design, and there's a particular bit on a car where the A pillar meets the bonnet and meets the front wing or fender, and there's various different ways you can blend that in, and it's quite a challenging bit for an automotive designer to get right. And you see, you go around looking at the cars now and noticing this kind of thing. But I liken that volute where the headstock in the Red Special meets the main part of it. It's like that. It's this meeting of a lozenge type shape into a semicircular kind of section, and it's just beautifully blended.
And it is, and that's the thing. It could have been so easy for them to get that wrong. And
who cares? But people would hardly see it. You hardly ever see it.
But you can tell they took pride in it and they wanted it right, because even when going back to talking to Andy, we talked a little bit about the negative space on the guitar from where the scratch plate is, and just the balance, the aesthetic balance of the guitar is spot on.
I agree. Yeah,
and I do question myself sometimes, and I ask, is it just because I'm a Queen Brian May Red Special fan?
I do too.
Or is it because it's aesthetically pleasing to look at? And I can tell you, having owned the Time Warp guitar, it's aesthetically pleasing because I find myself just staring at it.
Yeah. No, and I would not like to admit how many hours I've sat staring at pictures and those X-rays, and how many tweaks I've done to that pickguard design before and after I've cut them. But it's just, I never tire of looking at it and looking at the curves, and it is very aesthetic. It flows, doesn't it? It's like, it's almost, I can't it's almost artistic.
It is, and it's it's a testament to them, because as an engineer, it's so easy to make something functional, and not aesthetically pleasing.
And the other thing is, I think there's been discussion on the forums about which guitars. I think I've got it clear in my mind which guitars potentially inspired the Red Special, but it isn't reminiscent of any one guitar. And that's what I find amazing, because I think, trying to put myself back then, I would have just probably copied some sort of Gibson, the ES355 or a Strat. I would just copied that and said, we'll change this and change that. But you just want a guitar. Yeah. You just copy a Burns Cobra or something. But I can see elements of other guitars in the Red Special, but it isn't sufficiently like anything else around then or now. Like a Les Paul. Yeah. To go, it's based on Les Paul. It's based on a Gibson ES355.
It's something else that has been brought up recently. Gerben, who was on the podcast, he's creating his own mayonnaise special, he's called it.
I've seen that on the forum. Good on Gerben.
And it's based on, I think, Andrew Guyton's Portofino shape, but Gerben sort of kind of made it his own a little bit. And it's very difficult in the modern world to create a new thing that is aesthetically pleasing, because a lot of new things are harping back to the old things which we've all become accustomed to.
Let's just break off and talk about the Guyton RS Transporter. Right. So I have a purple one.
You do?
Number was it number 8 or number 9? Number 9, I think it is, a 25. And I rather like purple. If you if you go on my website, you'll soon realise I rather like purple. I can't explain why, but it's just I just like it. So I got the opportunity to buy this purple transporter, which was originally commissioned for Craig Farley. And so it's not just flat purple; it's metallic purple. It's just lovely. But I really appreciate that guitar now. But when I first saw the pictures of it, I really wasn't convinced at all by purely of the aesthetic.
Yeah.
I totally was sucked in by the premise of it, what it's designed to do. It's a headless guitar based on the Red Special, same neck, pickups in the same place, and it plays and sounds. And in engineering terms, it's equivalent to the Red Special. But I really wasn't convinced about the design at all, right? But then when I first saw one, and it must have been at that 2017 meetup, I was like, the engine, it was beautifully engineered and it was solid, and it's just like, I don't know, that in the pictures it didn't quite work for me. When I saw it, I was like, yeah, that's good. I like it.
It's a lovely shaped guitar, and I can see why certain people might think it's a gimmick, because it does have a slightly toy quality.
But I think that's what I originally thought until I picked it up and played it.
But I think that's partially owed to the fact that when Martin designed it with Andy, they gave it a flat red finish, and it kind of, that one piece red sort of almost the same colour that they did.
Is it Empire Red they call it?
Yeah, Empire Red finish.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing's like one colour. You lose that it's a piece of wood, and it's because it's a flat finished thing. But once you've actually held one and seen it and been able to examine it, it is a feat of engineering, and it looks fantastic. It looks like a guitar from Star Trek.
Yeah, talking about the finishes as well. So in terms of the Red Special itself, I'm quite a purist. I had very fussy. I had about 3 or 4 things that I was incredibly fussy about, and I wanted to try to nail on my build. And one of them was the colour or the hue, right? Hue. A lot of the replicas, you get this kind of burgundy, deep red hue, and it's nice, but it's not right.
Yeah.
We know that the Red Special is an orangey brown, and it goes red in certain lights, So it's like, right, I want to nail that. But the transporter, it just, I wasn't convinced by all these funky finishes, but actually when you see it, the thing is, it's a funky thing, and it absolutely suits those funky finishes. The funkier the better.
Definitely. And I think, like yours and mine that I originally commissioned with the hollow sparkle in it, just made it look so much more appealing than just a flat one colour.
That's right. So I mean, although I should add, although I like the colour purple, I wouldn't paint anything in it in my house, or I wouldn't have a car that's purple. I wouldn't wear anything purple, but I like purple. Yeah, and it works on that object.
It's a lovely guitar as well.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
And if we go back to chronologically, so you're working with Luke. Luke's cracking on making his videos and making the guitar, and your own build is, and I'm not going to take the mickey out of you too much, but is I wouldn't say faltering, but going at a slower pace. And the 2018 meetup happens. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That would have been the one where I took my... So the build going at a slower pace kicked me into the Strat modification.
Yeah, that's right. That's where I was
going. So let's talk about that, yeah. So I'd, on a whim, I always like Strats. I'm not like a real fan of Strats. To me, they're just a really nice playing guitar, but they're kind of... It's like the BMW 3 Series of guitars. They're really nice to drive, but they're absolutely everywhere, in every possible variant. So that's not... don't flame me, any Strat fan people. So I think was it my birthday? It was a birthday present myself. I was just on eBay. I don't think any alcohol was involved, but somebody was selling a really nice American Standard Strat in Candy Cola Red, and it's just one of these iconic things. It's just the Fiesta Red's quite nice, but the Candy Cola, that metallic, just a weak at the knees guitar, and like the Pearloid pickguard, and it was quite a good price. It was 800 quid or something. So I bought that, and it was hardly used. I think the guy that was selling it was into Ibanez. Yeah, he had he had an Ibanez which played well, and he liked that, and he hardly played the Strat, so he's offering it for sale. So I picked that up for 800 quid, and it's like, it smelled nice as well. It still smells the same as it. Whatever oil he was using to clean it smelled nice. So Candy Cola 2012 American Standard Strat with the maple neck and fretboard, just phenomenal, iconic, loved it. So chuffed to bits. So still have it. So I thought, I'll tell you what, at that point, I didn't have any Red Special type of guitar, something with trisonics on it. I could just plug into an AC30 and make that Brian May sound. So I thought, what can I do here? So I got the idea of just doing a fairly rough and ready modification. Why are you laughing? Yeah, you're laughing. We'll explain why John's laughing in a moment.
Oh, it's so Doug, isn't it?
It is. So yeah, but you see, Nigel Knight got involved with this, and that's why it
escalated.
It escalated in a good way. So I thought, we'll just do a rough and ready. What did I call it? A kind of makeshift Mcateer or something. So it was just intended to be. I had a piece of scrap black perspex. So just put some 6 Switchcraft switches in it and 3 trisonics and bang it on the Strat. Drop in mod.
A weekend's work, surely.
If that, an evening's work. So I was on the Facebook forum at this point. So alcohol is usually involved at one end or another with this. So Nigel got wind of this and said, "No, let's make a PCB switching unit for it based on the one I've designed for the transporter." And I'm like, "Yeah, that'd be a good idea." And Nigel's like Stella Artois, isn't he? He's reassuringly expensive, but all this stuff it's pro quality stuff, isn't it? We're a sucker for Nigel's pro quality stuff, whether we can play properly.
Wow.
Yeah. So Nigel got involved, and so I'm sure from his end, it was just a few clicks on his AutoCAD desk to change the PCB switching module for the Guyton RS transporter to modify it to fit in the control cavity of the Strat.
Yep.
So that sounded good. Now, what I didn't want to do, I'm not precious about the Strat, but I thought, well, I might want to move it on or convert it back in the future. So I just didn't fancy doing any routing with it. So I thought, right, it's just a drop-in mod. So Nigel modified the Guyton transporter PCB. It's a terrific unit. Now, it doesn't have the onboard treble booster because that wouldn't have fitted in the cavities. It's just literally the 2 pots and all the connections on a PCB with the 6 sort of push to break switches, which are great because they're kind of effectively noiseless, aren't they? And they're so intuitive.
They are.
And it's quite discreet.
Yeah. It's almost easier in a way than the original Red Special switching. Once you've used it, it's so much. You can press 3 fingers, 2 fingers down in any combination, and it becomes a bit more intuitive than the switching on the Red Special.
It's very, very good. So he modified the PCB, and I modified the pick guard, which was really easy. It just needed the apertures for the Burns trisonic pickups, so slightly larger apertures in a slightly different position, spaced out as far as I could, and 6 holes at an angle to match those switches. And then Nigel knocked out PCB and suggested that I mount it to the bottom of the pick guard, just make a little custom perspex plate, which is glued to the underside of the pick guard, super glue, and it's got little brass inserts in it, and it's a little bit of care. It's got little standoffs just to get the height correct, and you just screw it in. And actually, John, to be honest, that was the first project I'd executed myself that I thought, I've done a really good job of that.
Well, it's
because like you, we're very self-critical. So you do something, go, well, yeah, it's good, but I could be better. I could have done better. But I just looked at it and thought, it sounds really good.
It does as well. It's a fantastic sound.
And it just looked the business.
It did.
It still looked, and I want it to be kind of the mod to be stealthy. It still look pretty much like a Strat, but just sound like a Red Special. And I just took my time over it and made sure everything, the holes were cut neatly and the PCB lined up very well, and it just aesthetically it would look really good. And I got these 2 anatone aluminium, so they're like a Strat style control knob, but they're just bare aluminium like the Red Special. So it's a bit of a nod to the Red Special, but it's still Stratty. Yeah, and I'm really pleased with that.
It's a great guitar. It's fantastic, and you did bring that to the meetup, and it got played a lot.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? Yeah, so that was getting passed around the bar at the end. You have still got some vids of you playing it. No, I was quite pleased, and it was great. People were just like, because Strats are just so easy to pick up and play, aren't they?
They are.
And I think people listening, if I was corresponding with a guy via a direct message on Instagram just a few days ago, and he's in the UK, and he's trying to dip a toe in the water and get a Red Special. Not sure what to do, but he said, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So I said, well, have a good look at my website, because I've pretty much covered every base with making things from scratch and modifying other guitars. But I think that, okay, so Nigel's custom PCB solution was an expensive solution, but Tim Grocot's modified. Is that Burns? I'm not sure which model of Burns. It's this black one, isn't it? It's on the forum.
Burns Bison.
I'm not sure.
I can't remember.
Anyway, but he got some PCBs made up. You can get your own PCB design made up at relatively low cost. It's not prohibitive, and of course you can etch your own. It's not too difficult. So if you want, guys and girls out there who are on a budget, pick up even a Mexican Strat, or even some of these the cheapest, the Strat types, the Squires.
Yeah.
Get some Trisonics on it and just do either put the switches on it, toggle switches, or even go down a PCB route.
Yeah.
It's cheapest route into a Brian May sound.
But also, it's a good, if you're intending on learning about it as well, it's a great way of dipping your toe in without having to make too many big cuts in wood, and you can get your confidence up with it. But your guitar, that Strat was fantastic, and it definitely was.
Thanks. Yeah.
It was a great piece at the meetup. I think it was. I'm trying to remember meetup chronology now.
Yeah.
That was the meetup when Pete Malandrone turned up.
That's correct.
Yeah.
He came. Yeah, that's right. And that's the one we did the blind test of the 14 different guitars,
and they all sounded the same.
Yeah, that was brilliant, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that was Luke in the kitchen.
Luke Timmins.
Luke Timmins at Thiel Village Hall. It was played through his rig, wasn't it?
Yeah,
but
it was.
He got everybody's guitar that they brought in the kitchen, and he played them. And it was probably more luck than good judgment, but I believe I picked out, was it your transporter, or there was a transporter there? Just sounded a bit warmer, a bit fuller. So that's the transporter, but it was a bit of a wild guess. But I mean, Dan Thomas had a nice Les Paul variant there, and people just blurting. In the end, people were just blurting out random guesses. But I think it proved to all of us that the AC30 and with a decent treble booster, that signal chain is a large part of Brian's tone.
Definitely.
We're not talking about the style, which obviously is in his fingers, legato and stuff, but the pure tone of the signal chain.
And I think as well is it just goes to prove that all of our endeavours to make it as accurate as possible possibly aren't as important as we think they are. But I think where the importance does come from, though, with those things is if you know that it's right, it makes you happy when you play it. And if you're happy when you play it, you play better, and that translates into when you're listening to someone play guitar, you can tell if they're enjoying it or not. Yeah,
that's right. I think that the way Brian uses the vibrato arm, which just is designed perfectly to fall to hand, that doesn't work so well on the commercial instruments. No. So anything with a Fender style kind of 3-spring tremolo, it just even if you've modified the arm so it falls better to hand, it just isn't the same.
Not quite the same. And once you've tried the original style knife edge tremolo system and played with it a little bit, it's very hard to then play a Fender style, because the tremolo tends to be a lot harder, and getting the balance is so much more difficult, because that knife edge with a frictionless tremolo that Brian and Harold designed is so well balanced, it just becomes second nature
to him.
Well, not to us maybe.
It's like eighth nature to me.
So we've gone through that meetup, and then again we had to dance a little dance to get you to turn up to that one, and you were like,
it's too far. It's too expensive, it's a long drive.
I'm not coming. And I think Sean ended up bending your arm to bring you along to that one. And you were forced to stay the night at the Thiel Hotel as well, the Calcott.
That's right. So I drove 990 miles that weekend.
Nice.
To Sean's, stay with Sean, and
then you came
fire around the M25, the M4, Reading.
And you stayed at the Calcott and had a great night.
I remember the first time I actually stayed in London, didn't I? So I hedged my bets. Came down by train. I've tried everything, haven't I? I'm going to drive down again this year, but stayed in London. Came along by train, and then I left at about 10:30 to get the last train. Just everything was kicking off, and I'm like, bye.
No, but it's good you came down, Doug. And then I forget how it came about, but you and I were both on holiday in Cornwall around the same time the following year, and I think we'd probably talked about it a few months in advance, and we're like, we're in Cornwall, John, if you fancy, and the family coming down to see us. Actually, Doug, we're in Cornwall that weekend, or that week as well. And
what a coincidence.
It was very much so, and we arranged to meet up on Rock Beach.
We should probably explain about Cornwall and rock, because people might think we've just made that name up because it's rock, guitar, rock music.
It's rock beach.
Rock is we were just there yesterday, actually, funnily enough. Rock is as a village in Cornwall. It's opposite Padstow. Anybody's heard of that? And it's where very rich people in the UK maybe have second homes, and possibly celebrities live. But that's not the reason why we went there. We went there for a gastropub meal at the Mariners, which is owned by it's part of the Paul Ainsworth group.
Nice.
This isn't a plug at all to get any money from Paul Ainsworth, but we had a lovely meal. That's why we're at the Mariners and Rock. So Rock, and there's a Rock Oyster Festival, which I think is a music festival. People may have heard of that.
But as luck would have it, Vicky, my wife, booked for us to stay in an Airbnb in Padstow, and Rock Beach was just a very cheap pedestrian ferry ride away. And we went over, and then Doug and Jane and Ben and Emily joined us later on in the day, and our children got on like a house on fire and played until we got on the ferry on the way back and realised they'd all burnt to a crisp. No. Great parenting there. But Doug and I sat chatting about Red Specials on the beach for probably far too long, so much so our wives left us and wandered off to do something far much more interesting. And I forget how the conversation came about, but Doug, I think it ended up with you saying, well, if you were interested in actually building one again, John, I could probably help you.
Yeah, it's as you know, I think people have a misconception about CNC and CAD. They think once you've designed it, you can just knock out a guitar, and maybe you can if it's a solid body, where an oiled wood solid body, but not a Red Special. No. There's probably, I wouldn't even like to hesitate to estimate, the machine work versus hand finishing. But you can use CNC to part make a neck and part make a body, but there's still a great deal of handicraft needed to finish the guitar. But having inputted all the time and effort, it seemed reasonable for somebody else who knows what they're doing and's got a bit of handicraft skill and is a proper enthusiast to go, well, if I'm going to have another go at this, let's see if it wasn't a fluke. Yeah. We could just try to, quote unquote, knock out some sort of kit. If we were to hypothetically make a Red Special kit, could somebody who knows what they're doing hypothetically turn it into a decent instrument?
And the answer is no. No, it's
the answer is yeah.
Just about. So we then, I think you probably regretted asking me, because then my brain started ticking over, and I probably sent you about 4,000
When your brain
emails.
starts ticking over, it goes 100 miles. It's a bit like me, actually. You get an idea and you just
you've got to go with it, haven't you?
Run with the baton. Yeah.
And so several hundred emails later, between Doug and I, we finally nailed what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. And
glued and screwed, not nailed, Joe.
Well, yeah, glued and screwed. Well, first we had to make the block board. That was glued, and then the body is glued together and then screwed.
I hate glue.
Yeah.
Ever since I was 6, I hate glue.
Doesn't taste very nice, does it?
It's disgusting. Don't sniff it.
No, don't, even if it makes you happy when you're building. But anyway, we went over these details, and I had so many questions for Doug, because I was trying to understand from knowing what went into it, what I would need to provide Doug, and I wanted to make sure that I provided Doug with everything in spec as to what Doug requested, because I realised and knew that what he'd offered me, two things. One, he possibly hadn't realised the gravity of what he'd offered me in terms of his own time. And two, it was such a gracious thing to do that if I was going to do it, I needed to try and do it to the best of my ability to make Doug feel like I was a worthy choice to make the kit with, really, because it's a big undertaking.
And I'll just say again, so a couple of hours ago when I arrived, I saw John's amazing time warp Guyton Red Special, and but the first guitar I picked up was his home build, and he was cringing and he was apologising for it, and I thought, hey, this is pretty good, John. Pretty good.
I guess it's like anything though. Over time and having gone through the process, where you could have made things better.
Well, mine's the same. So I'm just I'm making a whole new neck for mine for various reasons. But it's good. Things will always be better. Yeah, but it's good.
So we set about this communication, and this was back in the July 2 years ago to the day, roughly, because you'd have been on holiday and we'd have been on holiday. So would have been about 2 years ago.
We tend to go on holiday at the same sort of 2 weeks every year.
You do,
5 years we do. So.
And I think we didn't have one of our children in school at that point, so it was the last summer holiday before Holly was going to school. Anyway, Doug and I have then discussed at great length how we're going to do this, and we were getting on to Doug talking about how much time it takes with the CNC machine, And I suggested, oh, well, why don't I fly up to Scotland for the weekend and I can get everything to you and we'll pick a date and then the two of us can do it. So it halves the load. And Doug seemed to think that was a good idea. So in November of that year, late November.
2019,
yeah. I jumped on a plane, having posted a large box of bits up to Doug. Arrived at the airport.
Edinburgh Airport.
Jumped on the tram. Then a train. And then Doug and Ben picked me up and we went to work in Doug's garage trying to put this together, and it wasn't without its challenges that weekend, Doug.
No, we overcame them though. It was we were sweating the details, weren't we? But the CNC machine's susceptible to electrical disturbances in the house. So you turn on the any large current consumers in the house, it can send through a bit of an electrical pulse through the it did. I think Jane put the microwave on for make the lunch for the kids, and it caused a slight jump in when we was cutting the tenon section of the neck. So you ended up having to scarf in a bit of veneer to correct that. But could have been worse. It could have ploughed a huge gouge in it, so we got off quite lightly.
We did, and we also had some temperature issues as well when the machine was.
Oh, that's of course it was. Yes, it was November, wasn't it? So it was chilly in Scotland.
Very cold. But we spent pretty much, I mean, we were like, oh yeah, we can hang out and cut this and do that, and we literally spent the whole time knelt down by the CNC machine on the floor with a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, that's another thing as well. I was working without any kind of dust skirt, so I was just manually vacuuming away because I couldn't be bothered setting up a dust skirt.
But I found the whole thing really interesting because I arrived and Doug wanted to go through the health and safety of it all first so that I knew what was going on, and
because I wanted you to leave with all the same digits in place that you arrived with.
And we went through that, and then we sort of understood. I think Doug understood after a short time that I was not as daft as I look.
Yeah, you've worked with machinery and stuff.
And
you know what you did,
sort of
great.
Came up with a few solutions, and we pre-planned quite a lot of it, and we had to we had a problem with the width of the neck blank, didn't we?
Yeah, so we were midway cutting. And I've explained this on one of my YouTube videos, but normally neck blanks are sized for if you're manually cutting them. So there's only as much timber as there needs to be. Yeah. So we mentioned before that the width across the headstock is 3 inches, 76 mil. So most often you buy a good quality mahogany neck blank, and it's not much more than 3 inches across. So, however, the CNC machine, when you're making a 3D object, you need to retain that object inside a frame. The reason being, with a neck, it's a double-sided cut. So you then need to flip it over to cut the other side. Now, as I found with the first test cut I did, I wasn't as experienced then as I am now. You make one mistake and you're experienced. Of course, there's a margin of cut for the cutter that you're using, and the cutter has to create its own space to work in. Otherwise, it bangs off the sides and it sends it off awry. These are problems you don't get with big commercial machines because they're more powerful. But so the neck blank wasn't wide enough, and I realized this in time as it's moving down past the headstock, the edges. I'm thinking this is going to break out of the frame.
Yeah. Stop.
So we stopped. Then we had to hastily find a way of augmenting the width of the wood. So we just ended up gluing some scrap bits of wood on.
Some of those bits you don't throw away anymore came into great use.
The scrap timber. Yeah. Always keep your scrap timber. But then of course you made us this L-shaped aluminium bracket as an alignment guide, because the other thing you can do is you can spend 6 or 7 hours cutting a neck, and if you don't, when you flip it over, if it doesn't align exactly, the bottom part of it will be off to one side or off to the back or front or both. It'll be displaced, it'll be vectored. Well, and that would be very disappointing.
And then we realised that the height of that was too high, so we had to install it, glue the piece down to the deck so that it wouldn't move, and then take the L-shaped bracket away so that it could do the cut, and then replace the L-shaped bracket to turn the neck over.
You're bringing back painful memories, John.
But we overcame the challenges that we had, Doug, very quickly.
Yeah. But again, it just shows you that when you've got two people working on a problem, they've got a shared goal, and there's a pressure of a time frame to do something, boy, do you come up with solutions pretty quickly.
Yeah, I thought we worked pretty well together on that.
We did, yeah. And you come up with this great idea of, why the hell didn't I think of this 3 years ago when I built the machine? That the emergency stop button is usually emergency stop buttons on machines have certainly on a nuclear reactor control desk. all our emergency stops, but our trip push buttons have Perspex hinged covers over them, so you don't. There's a deliberate action to lift the cover before you press the button. However, on the Stepcraft, this early iteration of the Stepcraft machine, the emergency stop button is very easily knockable, kickable, and it just bombs the whole process out. So John just said, well, why don't you, these bits of scrap wood you use to prop up a platform for your mini drill press, why don't you just put one of those either side of the push button and another one along it, so we can just knock them out of the way quickly if we need to use it. I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. Why didn't I think of that 3 years ago?
Well, it's all...
Because I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
It's one of these obvious things that as soon as it's pointed out to you, you're like, that's so obvious, why didn't I think of that?
I think because the two of us in the room, in the garage around the machine, there's a lot less space. When it's just one of you, you're less likely to bang it because you've not got one of you there and one of you there.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, we spent this time and Doug cut all this stuff out, and I think I had to leave because my flights were on the Sunday night and I had to get back to go to work on the Monday, and we hadn't quite finished one of the sections of the blockboard, and Doug carried on when he got back and the machine died, and it sort of
I think the cutter got blunted and it ploughed it up. But it's actually, in retrospect, it's amazing what we got achieved that weekend.
Yeah, loads.
We could have basically ended up with a lot of scrap wood and sawdust and not been friends anymore.
No. Well, I said to you, no matter what happens, if this works or if it doesn't, it's not a reflection of you.
Well, no, I think any of us, I would have just carried on and said, whatever had happened, even if it was set the garage on fire, just doused it out, repainted it, and come back 3 weeks later and done it again, and kept doing it till it was right, because we just do that.
And then around that sort of time as well, Luke from America, who we've mentioned before, had started talking to me and Doug about arranging a US Red Special meetup, and he was talking about it like, what do you do? And he'd asked me about how do I arrange it, and Doug and I had sort of spent enough time chatting to him and to each other and spent the weekend together and gone, actually, you know what, Luke, if you book it and do it, we'll both fly over to Phoenix and support you with your endeavour.
It's just one of those things that you just say and then get the credit card out and then just do it. And
so in the March of that year, we find ourselves, me and Doug, bumping into each other at Heathrow. Oh dear. And
just go to Arizona for 5 days randomly to
why not?
Meet up.
So we met each other at Heathrow. I forget what terminal it was now. Is it 5? I can't remember. Some terminal in Heathrow, and we not bump into each other, but meet up at Heathrow through departures and jump aboard this BA plane and flew to Arizona. And Luke picked us up, and we spent the week in Arizona pretty much. Well, not the whole week because we went travelling, but we went to the US meetup and we met the great Ron Wood. Ron Smith. It's Ronnie Wood. No, Ron Smith, and met James Chen and Jonathan.
I want to say Planet, not John Griffin.
John Griffin, who you mentioned earlier, and all Luke's friends, and Gus, and Luke's wife, and Abe Ruthless, and
it's crazy, wasn't it? They spent about 6 hours of the meetup time setting up all this recording gear, because that's what they do. Yeah, they're professional audiovisual artists.
They are, and we had a great old time, didn't we?
It was brilliant, absolutely fantastic.
It's a real tonic for like the trials and tribulations of normal life, and we actually, because we had some more time, we did the Red Special meetup thing, and Luke showed us around Phoenix a bit, and then we drove out to LA.
Luke drove to LA. I just sat in the back. Yeah. That was the first time I've ever been on a long car journey and not been the driver. Yeah, it was great. So I just sat in the back, just like a kid. It
was awesome.
Watching America go by.
Well, we in the car for a day, pretty much, chatting about rubbish and Red Specials and the whole history of Queen, and then eating some nice American food, and then staying in some interesting places. And we had a great old time.
Yeah, we went to the Guitar Centre, didn't we?
Yeah, that was awesome, wasn't it?
So that was fantastic.
That was pretty cool. And then we went to Disney, and then we went off to the Grand Canyon, and then we got back to Luke dropped us off to the airport, and there was a guitar exhibition. And the
listeners, you can't see this, but I've got a wistful look in my eye now. I'm gazing out of the window with a wistful look in my eye, and that was amazing. Well, it was a bit of a surreal experience. Just fly to America.
It was great though to be the British
West Coast American, just go scooting around.
Yeah,
let's go to Disney.
It was awesome though, wasn't it? Yeah. It's so much fun.
It is, but it's refreshing just to. I'm not particularly spontaneous. I like to plan things, But that was fairly spontaneous.
Yeah, it was good.
And that was, as you say, it was a tonic. It was refreshing. So we both worked quite hard just to go, hey, we're going to take a week off. We're going to
go to Phoenix. And we landed, I think I landed, we both landed back in London, and Doug had a connecting flight up to Scotland, and my wife actually surprised me at the airport. So she was there with our youngest. She'd come up on the train. We got the taxi back to the car and drove home, and obviously Doug flew home and got home, and then the following week the country went into lockdown.
Oh, that's right. Yes, yeah, that's right. So talking to timelines, yeah, very, very quickly after we came back, were we very appreciative and fortunate that we'd done that at the time. And Luke chose the time, didn't he? Early March, so it wasn't blazingly hot in Arizona. And it was very pleasant, was it? Mid-20s.
It was lovely. And Doug proceeded to send me my kit of parts and bits and pieces for the Red Special when he got back. I think he had maybe one or two things he wanted just to finish off. And the kit arrived just as lockdown happened, and I spent lockdown building a Red Special.
Yeah, it must be nice to just have a guitar kit around.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, there's still things to do, obviously.
My kits, of which there's only one, come with a lifetime warranty. So that means that every time I make a change to my pickguard design or something,
they get sent out. Yeah.
Do you want a new pickguard? Yeah.
There's another new pickguard. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's another thing I think. I'll just knock out a pickguard, but actually, by the time I've cut it, do all the intricate things with it, and then started sanding it so that it isn't razor sharp, I might as well just dress the edge. I'll just polish the edge, and it's like 7 hours work. But they are beautiful things. I love making them. Every time I make one, you get that gloss on the edge. Now I do mine slightly differently to the little bit of nerddom here. So the real hardcore enthusiasts know that the pickguard on the original Red Special isn't fully beveled, as in a 45-degree bevel. It has almost like half of it. It's about an 1/8 inch thick, is it? Just over 3 mil, probably. So the top half has got like a bevel. Yep. The bottom half is vertical. However, so I prefer it aesthetically with the bevel to the full height. And that's how Andy did the. Is that how it's done on your time?
I haven't. We'll have to go and have a look in a minute.
Yeah. So Andy, what I was trying to aim for when I built my Red Special was kind of like a homemade Guyton, as in it's not actually a copy of Guyton, but it has a new look to it. It's like a freshly made guitar, but it looks like the Red Special. It's so Andy did his original pickguards fully beveled. Now I know Julian Hemingway on his builds, that's one detail he likes to build in. It just shows you the level of Julian. Was it 2018 Julian came? Yeah, and he brought some of his builds.
Oh yeah,
epic. He's Julian's. I know you're going to try and get Julian on the podcast. He's one of the old timers. Yeah. Can you say that now? Is that
maybe? I don't know.
Old timers, as in
he'll know what you mean, and he won't take it offensive.
Yeah, he's one of the guys who's around in the early days of when Brian May enthusiasts were getting together on forums and stuff. Yep. So that's a detail that Julian likes to build in, but for me, I don't do that. It's just an aesthetic preference. But I cut the pickguard with like a V groove bit, which works if you get the parameters right in the CNC. It cuts quite nicely, but it does tend to vibrate a bit. But still, it leaves quite a lot of machining marks in, so there's a lot more hand finishing on this knocked out by CNC pickguard than you might think to get it to look good.
Well, the whole thing, I think, you press go on the CNC machine, you hover over it for the next 8 hours as it's cutting out this thing, and then you clean up and tidy up, and then you've got the piece of wood, and then you've got to do there's work to be done. It's not it's not as easy or straightforward as it looks. But
I think we should say that, look, if you're thinking of building a Red Special the authentic way, don't let anything we've said here put you off. Just go and do it. For quite the opposite. Just do all the research. You can have a look at the website and just see what's involved. I'm not trying to put anybody off at all.
No,
but anything we've said here of how difficult it is, even with machinery and computers, it's a difficult build. I would suggest it's probably one of the more difficult builds to start as a home builder.
Definitely.
Don't let it put you off, but just do practice things and test things.
Yep.
And, John's made a really good replica. Luke has.
So you don't.
Mine's pretty good. Although I want to do a new neck for it. Just take your time.
Definitely, and practice is amazing because you know how the drill bit's going to react to that piece of wood when you come to cut it, or you know how the router bit's going to tear your side veneer off into a million pieces because you didn't glue it properly, or all of those things are worth learning on a scrap piece before you dive right into your actual guitar.
There's things. Go and learn what not to do as well. Yeah, but people want to, they get set off on a build, and I wasn't quite like this. They want to do it exactly as Brian did it without thinking why. Well, is that the right thing to do? I want to use rust-ins. Now I ended up using rust-ins, but it's not the easiest thing to work with. But I didn't feel I would get a good result in a garage in Scotland where it's quite humid and cool.
Yeah.
And my skills with aerosol sprays have never been good. It's like aerosol sprays, glues, just no. So in that respect, I felt that a brush-on formulation for a lacquer would work well, and it kind of did. And I didn't have any major issues with veneer sand through or anything like that. But that's why I chose to use rust-ins, not because it was what Brian and Harold did. They probably didn't have a lot of choices at the time. We've got a lot of fancy things like nitrocellulose aerosols, and equally people just want to use cascamite glue. To glue it together. Well, it's like, hang on a minute. Does anybody really care about that? No, I fine, go and do it. But there's lots of fantastic modern adhesive formulations, which I can't want to say Lockheed. It isn't. It's Titebond. Titebond. Just Titebond. I don't know who makes Titebond, but Titebond, the standard Titebond wood glue, is fantastic.
Yeah, and there's so many people out there that are on the forum as well to provide advice and provide helpful tips, or if you've got questions, join up and start getting involved in those conversations. Buy the book by Simon Bradley, because if you watch Luke Holwerder's videos, go to dsgb.net. There's so much information out there now that wasn't out there. If you want to build, go and read that for 6 months before you start chopping into wood, I would suggest.
I'd agree.
And then Doug, one of the other projects you were involved in, obviously you've talked a little bit about the next thing for you is to make a new neck for your guitar, to try and get that a bit more right. And I would say the neck's one of the harder things to get right, because that's the bit you interact with. It's the bit that sits in your hand, and it's where the frets are, and there's so many. Although the body's intricate and how it comes together, the neck is such a critical part that getting that right is very difficult. And we were looking at mine, and I cringe when I show people, because I know where the problems are, and I know what I struggled with, and I know what I'd do different next time, and it's probably the most cringy part of.
But none of this stuff is easy. Guys like Kazutaka and Andy Guyton do it for a living. They're professionals.
Oh,
and craftspeople. And they make professional. Anybody makes anything look easy.
Yeah.
And I didn't go into my build thinking this is going to be easy. In fact, quite the opposite. I knew it was going to be hard, but nothing prepares you for how hard it is.
No. And as I said, we're able to use computer-aided design and CNC machines to do these things, and we have all the benefits of the original guitar exists, and we can look at photos, and we can look at Guyton's, and we can look at KZ's, and Brian and Harold had none of this, and they had a piece of paper and a pencil, and they did all this stuff and nailed it.
Well, just pick up on one thing, and you chatted a bit with Andy about how he dresses his frets, which I've the ends of the frets particularly, but the whole fret dressing, and he has a nice kind of smooth, kind of roundy dressing to the end of his frets, and I very much wanted to reproduce this on mine, but I kind of did, but I ended up making the frets too roundy, and it took too much off the end, so it kind of effectively restricted the frettable width. Yeah. So I overdid it. Now, just again, it's the first thing I look at now. Well, not the first thing, but it's one of the first few things I look at on Red Specials now. And I know we've had a look at some that people have brought along to the meetups, and been a bit critical of the way the fret ends are dressed. It's the smallest thing, but and you covered it with Andy in the podcast of how important that is for the feel of it. You think you're dragging your hands up and down that.
100%. And
it's a critical detail, isn't it?
And those are the things that Andy's obviously very good at, had access to the original and been able to replicate that so that it replicates it correctly on the guitar. So some of those details you can't pick up in photos, but you have to make that mistake, or you have to.
Yeah, and I've tried. Believe me, I've tried to look at them, look at photographs, work out exactly how they dressed it. But again, it's another thing that Brian and Harold did very well. I've not played the original. I don't think you have either. But some of our peers have, but. That they dressed the frets intelligently,
very, and they
not knowing how been skilled in doing it,
and made a fantastic job. And they're still the same frets on the original today as they were back in the 60s when it's got a new 0 fret or 2, but the actual frets themselves. And Doug, you were also involved in the Guyton Time Warps in a small way, but a massive way, because you helped bring a part to life that hasn't been created for probably 40 years.
Those, the Jean Reno double pull, double throw parallel slide switches. There was rarer than unicorn horn.
Yeah, well, and you worked with Tim Grocott on those and created.
Yeah, that's a nifty little project. Yeah, I mean, I bought a set of they're not exactly the same design as the ones that are on Brian's. They must have. The company's long defunct now, but they must have slightly tweaked the design. But I managed to get a set off. Let's do another name check. Manuel Angelini, who's a fantastic chap in France. We could talk for half an hour about his story, but he was involved with. Well, that's not because it's no. Maybe you could get him on the podcast, but he was involved with working out the where the amplifier section from the DK amp came from,
the Supersonic PR80 Conquest.
Oh, yeah, and he's just sold me a batch of nice mahogany tone wood.
Yeah.
So, but I hadn't really interacted with him. I bought these switches. How would it have been? 2012, 2013, I think.
Yeah.
So he's managed to find a supply of these Jean Reno French-made parallel slide switches. But I'd like to get away from the geek fest here and explain why it's useful to have them, right? Because the body and the actuator, the plastic bit on those switches is smaller than modern equivalents, the Switchcraft series. So if you've got these, what you can do is you can replicate the lovely intricate aluminium switch frame.
Yep.
It's another part of that guitar that's under the hood that I think is aesthetically
it's a lovely thing, isn't it?
It's just what it needs to be, but it's got all these beautiful folds in it, right? And it's just big enough that it needs to be to accommodate those 6 switches.
And those folds, having made them,
you've
they're
done
an absolute nightmare to get right. They're an absolute. I wouldn't like to use the word that I used when I was doing mine, but I mean, I had 40 of them water jet cut out because I knew I'd break about 20 of them.
I think I made 3, and Luke, one was okay, except that's on my build. Luke got the other one. I think one got thrown away.
Yeah, they're a nightmare.
But yeah, again, it's another part of the guitar when you try and replicate it. You think this will be easy. Oh my goodness, it isn't.
3 months later.
Yeah. Anyway, so having these original switches is of value because the bit that the white plastic tip, the actuator that sticks up, is smaller and it's got a different ridge pattern on it, and it your eye's drawn to it because it stands out from the black perspex, but they're smaller and they're more aesthetically pleasing than the modern sort of Switchcraft equivalent. But also the bodies, the metal chassis, if you like, is smaller.
Yep.
So having those means you can make the switch frame the same. You can make the cavity the same dimensions as the original. And all this has a knock-on effect. And then if the cavity isn't too big, then you don't have to make any allowance for that with the pickguard design. Yeah. So it all has a knock-on effect. So I realised this quite early on and tried to snaffle up a set of these switches, which cost me €85 about 9 years ago.
Blimey, well, a set just sold for 150 quid.
Aye. Anyway, so back to on topic, right? So we felt between us it was worth trying to somehow replicate these switches. So I think Tim Grocott, as you say, got in touch with me on Matt Wickham's Builders Forum initially, and I said, well, I've got a set of these. Well, tell you what, this is a great idea. Let's see what we can do. So I took some detailed pictures of them with next to an engineering ruler, so you could see the dimensions. I put some lines on in CAD and said, oh, well, this arc here is this dimension. So Tim was able to go away and I think he's some sort of biochemist, isn't he? He works at a university.
Pretty clever.
So, yeah, he's a clever guy, and he's got access to some really good quality. Well, like the company that they use for 3D printing stuff for his lab. So he got some pretty accurate. The plastic part, the actuator part made up, but there's still a very, very intricate piece to make. They've got a little spring inside them. So there's anyway, we're well off topic now.
Yes.
But the piece that I made was this little phenolic resin Tufnol. They've got a little wafer, the kind of insulating base.
Yep.
So there's an insulating base, there's a metal chassis, there's the plastic actuator, and there's a spring. I think 2 springs inside the thing. So they're fiendishly difficult to make. All to get to make sure that the frame is the same, the cavity shape and dimensions are the same, and the pick guard dimensions are the same, but it's worth it in the end. So Andy, when he was making the Time Warp, he wanted everything as accurate as he possibly could to the original. But of course, what do you do about getting these switches? So I guess if Tim and I hadn't learned of this little amateur project that we had going on, he would have probably had to get them custom made at tremendous expense.
Yeah.
There would have been hundreds per set.
Yeah.
Let's say he got 30 sets made for spares. It would cost him £3,000-4,000.
It would have cost
to
him
have them custom made.
a load of money. And I've obviously been at yours, and you showed me the wafers, and then I've seen the finished product in the Guytons, and I've got a set in my own homemade because Tim was very good at lending me or giving me a set to try to test before Andy got his, and they're fantastic made things, and they're a thing of beauty in themselves.
But even so, it still needs modifying.
Yeah.
So the tough knoll only come in 2 mil thickness. So that's just too thick.
Yeah.
And with something that small, the originals are 1.8 mil, I think. So it's just wrong, and it probably won't. If you had to fold the metal chassis around something that's just slightly too thick, it won't work.
Yep.
So Andy then had to. I just cut the tough knoll and just gave Tim a bag of them. But Andy still had to manually abrade down that 2 mil thick piece to the correct thickness.
Yes.
So yet again, you can't just knock stuff out with CNC. You can't.
And it just shows you the guitar as well. Nothing is off the shelf. Absolutely nothing is a go to a guitar store and buy something. There's no part of that guitar that is off the shelf at all.
And that just makes it so much more special, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, and it is red and very, very special. Well, Doug, it's been an absolutely fantastic 2.5 hours chatting to you about...
It's never been 2.5 hours. Oh, my goodness.
It has. I'm sure my wife will shoot me in a minute. But yeah, no, it's been great to see you again, Doug, and catch up with you on your story so far.
Yeah, thanks.
And I'm sure over the next few years, you will add some stories to your tale, and we'll catch up again and see where you are then.
Someday we'll be the old timers in this community, John.
Quite possibly, if I'm still allowed to be involved in it.
Okay, well, thanks very much, John, for having me on the podcast. It's been great to come to your house and the kids to play together in the garden, and the weather is absolutely stunning here in Devon. And the ambience is much better when you're in the same room, isn't it? As you heard on the Guyton podcast. Yeah. So it's great. I don't think it wouldn't have been the same doing it over Zoom. It'd been quite awkward. So.
Not at all. It's great to see you as well, Doug, because it's been over a year and a bit since.
We've kind of I feel like I've just withdrawn a bit over the last year and just got my head down with work and all my other stuff, and the website, which it's been a lot more work than I thought it would be.
It's a common theme here, Doug.
Anyway, yeah. I hope the material's useful.
Yep. No, thank you very much. And we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
And that was the conversation with Doug, and what a brilliant conversation I think that was. It always seems better when the podcast is recorded live in the room with someone rather than across Zoom. And it was so great that Doug was able to come up with his family and spend the time with us in the garden. And we had fantastic weather, and also to record the podcast for everyone. It was a great time. So hopefully moving forward, we'll be able to do that a lot more with people who I speak to. We've got one more podcast which we don't have video for, which is the next one after this one, and then from then on all podcasts will be having video to go with them. So if you want to watch and see the guest I'm speaking to, then head on over to YouTube and you'll be able to see who that is. And again, as normal, I just want to thank everyone for listening, watching, sending comments. Your support, it means the world to me that this is interesting to you all. And I really hope that you're getting something from it. And there's some more to come this year. 2022 is going to be a big year. We've got some news coming up in the next few videos about a meetup or two. And hopefully you'll be able to stick around and find out what I'm talking about. You all stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next one.